Well, it's the magic hour, 7 o'clock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Lakewood City Council study session agenda for Monday, May 23rd, 2022. So we have a variety of really interesting items for discussion tonight. The first is a presentation of the public participation or public perception of climate change in Lakewood, which of course involves participation, right? Because we're all involved and all responsible. So I'm going to call on our planning manager, Tiffany Spear, who will introduce the students from the University of Washington Evans School. And they will come forth and give us their work plan after Ms. Spear gives us an overview.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor. Tiffany Spear. It's nice to see you all in person. And also in person tonight, we do have 4 individuals who were fortunate on our part, I should say, not they were fortunate, we were fortunate to have them join us over the last 6 months or so. And their names are here on the screen. You can see Charlie Thompson, Cassidy Berlin, Eric Villani, and Tori Chapman. And what they have done is supplement the work that Director Buer has done since September of 2020 on preparing first an energy and climate change chapter that was adopted by council in this last year's comprehensive plan amendment cycle. And now the implementation plan, which is in front of the Planning Commission. You'll hear probably a little bit about that from them tonight as well. But what the students have done is some preliminary work to take the temperature, if you will, of Lakewood residents and businesses about what they think of climate change, what they understand it to be, and what potential roles the city itself, the businesses, and the people that live in Lakewood can all play in reducing, mitigating, dealing with climate change effects that are happening here in the city and will continue to happen and as far as we can see for now. So I'm going to invite them all 4 to come up. They're going to share the mic and walk through a presentation. I would also like to recognize the fact that we were successful in having a presentation at the state's planning conference just a few weeks ago. And the 4 of them were also there and presenting there. And so they represented Lakewood very well, as well as themselves. So I will turn it over to the 4.
Well, welcome. Excited and pleased to have you all tonight. This is great.
Oh, it's me first, huh? Yeah. Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Tori Chapman. I'm joined today by Eric Villani, Charlie Thompson, and Cassidy Berlin. And we are soon to be graduates at the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance at University of Washington. For the past 5 months, we have been consultants with the City of Lakewood to better understand how your local residents feel about the issue of climate change. And we will gladly take any questions at the end of this presentation. Our research was primarily guided by 4 questions. How do residents engage with the topic of climate change? Do they believe it? Oh, goodness. Is it working? Oh, back one. There we go. Oh. Okay. Very nice. All right. Awesome. How do residents engage with the topic of climate change? Do they believe it is a serious issue that the city is facing? What do residents think the city should be doing in order to adapt to climate change and to prepare for its associated risks? And finally, how can the city use these findings to inform the upcoming climate action plan and future public engagement surrounding climate change? Next slide, please. As far as our methodology, our approach had several steps. We started with a literature review, which was us looking at existing climate studies, background information, and effective research strategies. All of these sources informed our interview process, which we conducted through community conversations with the help of the Lakewood team. After analyzing our interviews to gather narratives, and with our other sources, we created a survey in both digital and physical form to capture diverse public opinions as data to find trends and tendencies. We have used our analysis to inform the recommendations we are presenting today. Next slide. But before we tell you about our findings, we want to highlight the important intersections between environmental and health risks. Here are graphics from the Department of Health that explore differing environmental health burdens across Lakewood communities. As a quick note, the Department of Health indicates income for several metrics, such as percentage of the population under the federal poverty line, and 185% of the federal poverty level, which is adjusted annually and depends on household size. For instance, for this year, a two-person household that earns a little less than $34,000 is considered to be at 185% of the federal poverty level. And this is important because communities who are considered low income, which are disproportionately comprised of people of color, often have unequal access to resources or economic mobility that would protect them from the worst outcomes of climate change. And so by centering these communities in our study, we strove to include those who would be most at risk from climate change in our final results and in our recommendations. And with that introduction, I will hand it over to Charlie to discuss our public engagement process.
Great, thanks, Tori. So our public engagement process had two main steps to it. We started by interviewing community members with the intention of using what we learned from the interviews to better inform the development of a much broader community survey. The interview process was over 6 weeks. We interviewed 18 community members, and we had organic conversations with these community members and asked them to please fill out an anonymous demographics questionnaire afterwards. We also included a series of demographics questions in the broader community survey that I just mentioned. That way we can understand how this project is reflecting the actual demographics of the city. So what did we learn from the interview process that helped inform the survey? We learned three main things. We added a few demographics questions to the survey. One, for example, is interviewees didn't feel comfortable answering the question about household income. So we added a question to gauge for that by adding or asking about whether or not respondents rent or own their home. We also changed the wording of one question. We originally asked interviewees, do you believe in climate change? And they had an issue with the wording of that. So we changed it to, do you believe that the global climate is changing in the survey? And third, and most importantly, hearing from underrepresented voices allowed us to expand the answer choices that we included in the survey itself. So for example, if one is privileged or a community is privileged to live in an area with a bunch of green spaces, they might not understand the effects and the harms of the urban heat island effect, and that would be excluded from our report and from our survey answers. We developed the survey with more than just the interview process. We did get fantastic feedback from University of Washington professors as well as our City of Lakewood team. The survey was live for 2 months, and we were able to translate it with the help of the City of Lakewood into the 3 most common languages in Lakewood: English, Spanish, and Korean. And we use many means of distribution, hopefully to be able to get at those underserved populations in Lakewood. So we started with social media and a very successful press release with the help of Jim Priva. We also posted physical flyers in about 25 locations around the city. And with the city's help as well, we were able to send out prepaid mailer, like physical surveys, to 3 low-income neighborhoods in Lakewood. So here is a couple of pictures of our flyers within the community. But next, Eric will tell you about the fun stuff, which is the results of our survey.
Hello, okay. As Charlie mentioned, now we can get to the results. Okay, so first I would love to talk about the demographics of who actually ended up responding to our survey. So as you can see, the majority of respondents were white women over the age of 30 with an income of less than $60,000. So that was the majority of our responses. But we do have a couple things we want to highlight in addition to that, which are the relatively high response from people of color, which made up 38% of our respondents in total, and the relatively high response rate from youths. So people under 18 made up 12% of our total respondents. So the first question we asked was belief in climate change. So as you can see, there's a really strong majority of residents that believe the global climate is changing, which is 90%. And 81% of our respondents believe in human-influenced climate change. So that's a pretty positive result. And it's also important to note that that result didn't change very much along demographics lines. Another question we asked was, where do you get your news and information about climate change? So this was a pretty interesting question for us. And the two most common responses were science/academics and the media. As you can see, for people under 30, media was the most common response. And for those over 30, it was actually scientists and academics. One point to bring up is kind of the ambiguity of these terms, especially media. We're thinking that probably a lot of those under 30 tended to take that to mean more social media, and possibly those over 30 were thinking more like the news or traditional media outlets. Question.
I think the PDF is old and off.
Shifted.
Can we adjust the way that the PDF is on the page?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, great. So another couple of questions that we asked were about harm perception. So getting at how much do you think climate change will harm you, the respondent, personally, versus how much do you think climate change will harm future generations in Lakewood? So you can see for the personal harm question, there's a pretty good spread between all of those options. The majority of people still, they do believe that it will cause some kind of harm, but it's a pretty even spread. Whereas when we go to future generations, there's a very clear majority of people that believe that climate change will harm future generations a great deal. So this basically just tells us that people perceive climate change to be a problem in the future that future generations will deal with, but they don't really think that it's going to affect them right now. So this could affect city communications in a way where it would make sense to emphasize the present realities of climate change and just talk about examples of ways that climate change is happening right now and focusing on that. Another question we asked about was about personal behavior change. So we asked, have you changed your behavior to decrease your impact on the environment? This is kind of getting at that individual lifestyle change aspect of climate change action. And you can see, again, a good majority of respondents, 75%, said that they have changed their personal behaviors. And then we also thought it would be interesting to kind of compare this to another question we asked, which was about stress and anxiety related to climate change. So this bar graph on the right is percentage of people who have changed their behavior to decrease the impact on the environment, but categorized by stress level about climate change. So as you can see, people that are not stressed at all, that's the bar on the right, they're not very likely to have made personal changes, but all three categories of people that are at least somewhat stressed, they're much more likely to have made personal lifestyle changes. Then another question was, which of the following weather events have you been impacted by? So you can see the two most common results by a pretty clear margin are smoke from wildfires and excessive heat. So this could be used to inform climate adaptation efforts from the city in the future. Lastly, we had a question about potential actions the city could take on climate change, and this compromises both adaptation and mitigation efforts. So we've gone ahead and bolded the results, or bolded the questions where over 50% of respondents said that they would support that action. So we have increasing support for and availability of renewable energy resources, factoring climate change adaptation into long-term planning, creating more community gardens, adopting regulations emphasizing energy efficiency in buildings and construction, and finally, offering more resources and information on how individuals can help prevent climate change. For this question, we also had a write-in option, and we got 19 write-in responses. And of note is that 4 of those did mention tree preservation in particular as a topic that they were passionate about. Now I'm going to pass it on over to Cassidy.
Thank you, Eric. So my name is Cassidy. I'm going to be ending our presentation with our recommendations briefly. So we developed recommendations using community feedback through those resident surveys and interviews that you just heard about. And we also sourced best practices from climate change and social psychology research. The next slide for me. Thank you. So our first recommendation for the city to consider is to facilitate climate change engagement using simple, positive language that both educates residents about climate change and that connects residents with community-based actions and policies that they can participate in. Our second recommendation is to emphasize the adoption of specific policies as a high-impact alternative to advocating for voluntary individual actions to address climate change. These policies include adaptive actions that will help the city adjust to the new realities of climate change, as well as policies that reduce the city's overall environmental impact. Finally, we've developed a strategy for the city to center Lakewood's low-income residents and residents of color in all climate action and engagement opportunities, as we know these communities experience disproportionate exposure to climate-related harms. For the full details of our research strategy and public engagement plan, I reference the Council, Planning Commission, and Lakewood residents to our final report, which we will submit to the city this Friday. It has been a privilege and an honor for us to contribute to Lakewood's climate action efforts. Thank you to the staff, City Council, Planning Commission, and residents for partnering with us on this project. We're happy to take any brief comments or questions that you have at this time.
Well, thank you very much for your work and report. I'll turn to my panel for any questions. Deputy Mayor Moss.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out this evening. I appreciate it. I appreciate your statements. My question is, did they explain the reason they had a problem with the climate change question?
Those who did think that that was an awkward question said they didn't necessarily believe that climate change is something that one actually believes in, like a religion or like other values that they might have. So I think that they took it to be something that is not like as core to them as like an identity, like a religion.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mhm.
Councilmember Farmer.
All right, let me say it for the record. Go Huskies. I had a question about slide 14, where folks said that they got their information from scientists and academics. I'm curious, how they got that information? Was it directly from websites, or I'm curious?
So we speculated after receiving the results of this, because we just asked this question point blank and then asked everyone to select all that apply under that question. One of the things we wonder is how many people truly get their news directly from scientific journals and academics versus how many people want to get their news from there, or how many people consider that a trusted source. And so in our final report, one of our recommendations is to kind of couch City Council policies and action on climate change as being grounded in academia or in scientific research, because it seems like people certainly support receiving their information from there. I think we're slightly doubtful that many Lakewood residents are regularly reading those hard to pay for and inaccessible scientific reports directly instead of getting them from the media.
Or yeah, maybe the media did a story, or they were reported through some sort of media source, or from a university website, or that sort of thing. Okay, very curious. Thank you.
Member Bell, and and Councilmember Boki.
Thank you. Great presentation. So I had a question because on the public outreach portion, because the numbers are so disproportionate on the outreach, I know that you said you had 3 translations available. What are some other things that you did or that you think maybe you could do to reach more of the underserved communities? Because again, I'm looking at the demographics and they're extremely disproportionate. So I would like to know a little bit more about that.
Take that one. We speculated it had something to do with the availability of resources, like who has the capacity to respond, who has the time, who is disproportionately having to do other things like working longer hours. And behaviorally, people are more likely to respond to surveys or voluntary action when there is some sort of reward or chance of reward. So maybe perhaps some sort of raffle or gift cards might improve our results. Eric, do you have something else to say?
Yeah, and, just a few thoughts to add is this is another topic that we kind of dive into a bit more in our final report as well. And like some of the strategies that we discussed there are also like communicating how resident feedback will be used and making the full process as transparent as possible. So saying to people like, you could be compensated in this type of way and we'll use your feedback in this type of way. And like you can expect to see it, like to see the results of that, see a decision or come to a meeting at like this time, like giving people like a timeline and a thought process is just one strategy that we also talk about.
Great, thank you. I look forward to reading more about that in the report then. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayland. A couple of questions. The first one harkens back to what Councilmember Bell said. Did you see any differences, discernible differences from the ones that were done in a different language? As you mentioned Korean, Spanish, and English. Was there noticeable differences in how the questions were answered?
Yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, that kind of ties back to Councilman Patty's point about like our response rate in general. We actually had, I believe it was 2 responses to the Spanish survey and 0 for Korean in the end. So that's definitely an area that we could improve.
So one thing I'll expand on with that as well, those translated surveys were not filled out to the extent we thought we were going to be. We asked a question about what's the primary language spoken in your household. 12% of respondents gave a non-English answer. So we're finding that a lot of about 12% of the surveys that we got in were filled out in English by households that primarily do speak other languages. We didn't find statistically significant results with that question. And that could also go back to sample size. That doesn't mean that there's no belief tied to language or heritage or anything like that, but that we didn't get big enough numbers for our statistical analysis to show a correlation there. And I think it also tells the city that translation is not the only barrier to getting those disadvantaged communities to engaging with this. It means there's more to learn, which it was disappointing on our end, but I think it was a valuable piece of information for us to realize.
Thank you. And then I do have a question on, I guess it's page 20 of our packet. It's the dealing, it says communications and policy development. So under policy development, policy alternatives to individual actions supported by residents. Help me out. What is, I have little things going on in my head, but what does that mean to you?
I appreciate you asking that. One of the things we find with climate change communications frequently is the advocacy of you just changing things in your personal life. If you just recycle, if you just start composting, that's enough to help with climate change. And it's not ethical to advise that because it's not small individual actions that create climate change. It's much broader policies. It's the work of bigger entities than individuals. And so we can't advise in good faith that people address climate change through individual actions because it simply won't do the job. And so we're here recommending to the city that when you adopt communication strategies or specific policies, Don't just tell people to change their individual behavior, but please advocate for widespread community-based policies that make a small change in an individual's life, but on a greater scale have a much larger effect.
Okay, widespread community-based policies, okay. That I can get around, okay, thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate your efforts on our behalf. This is a realm that there's a lot of interest in the community. And as I think as you found, and some difference of opinion about to do that. When you started this process and you did a literature review of past surveys of things like that, did you find in your review surveys of cities that were similar to Lakewood? And if you did, were the results here similar to the results of those surveys?
Yes, thank you for your question. When we did our literature review, we did look for other entities that had similar studies to this. We looked at the national level, the state level, and then we looked at the Puget Sound regional level. And of course, at the national and state, it was easier to find studies that asked similar questions to we did, and that made correlations and found relationships that we did. But we did not find a study within Puget Sound at the municipal level that was like this one. So we couldn't make a direct like Lakewood to this other city comparison. But something that was interesting that we found was Eric talked about the statistics on the population that we surveyed that believe in climate change and believe in anthropogenic climate change or human influenced climate change. Those percentages that we had were notably higher than when the state of Washington residents were asked the same questions. So that's a point that we talk about in our report, that there is an understanding and sense of climate change urgency within the city of Lakewood that seemed to be above the state level, according to a Yale Climate Center Communications survey that was similar to this study.
And why would that be? I mean, one thing that I would think if I was living in Chelan, I would have much more vivid vision of climate change impacts than I do here. I have to, where here in Lakewood, people smelled smoke as opposed to having their houses burned down. Do you think that it had to do with education level? Do you think it has to do with just the fact that in this region there are a great many environmental groups that translate easily into climate change concerns, or?
Yes, that was our understanding because of the prevalence of the resources, the discussion about it within the Puget Sound region. Maybe that was part of the reason why Lakewood residents were higher in that question. Do you believe in climate change, or that the global climate is changing compared to the state level? We didn't have questions that has statistical significance, or in other words, like that can prove like this is the reason why when you answer this question, it is higher than the state or a different entity. But what you just said was also our understanding of why that number might be as high as it is.
So given that relationship about there seems to be more urgency in our community than maybe in some others, what's your recommendation about how we should, as a council, should be really prioritizing things and prioritizing, the council prioritizing has to do with not only what we do, but what percent of our budget do we devote to things? Did you sense concern, or did you sense urgency?
Sure. I think that we did sense both. I think we probably sensed concern over urgency based on like some of the graphs and the questions that we asked, but bringing it back to Cassidy's response, I think that if we had to sum it up in like one recommendation to the council, or at least if I did, I would say that building collective action and taking advantage of the individual's concerns and anxiety and thoughts and stress about climate change might be the best tool to move forward. So collective action is something that people, in the policy world talk about. It's a successful way to make individual action more significant on a larger scale. So keeping that in mind, I think throughout different climate actions and processes and policies moving forward would be advantageous, because it did seem to us in the interviews and the surveys that the City of Lakewood residents do and can engage in this topic if they're educated on it or kind of guided as you guys are doing it. So.
Yeah. You had a slide that I guess, I don't know, it's page 18 of my packet, but it's of the following actions the city could take, which would you support? And then there's a group of them there. Is the list that I'm seeing the list that was on the survey, or is it a list of the ones that got at least 40%?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way we set up that particular survey question is all those options that are in that table above is the options that we provided people with. And respondents were able to select as many as they wanted of city actions that they personally would support. And then there was also a write-in option where they could just write in whatever they personally believed, whatever their priorities were of what the city should do. And that's something that's in our full report as well. We have just compiled all of those so that if you're interested, you can just read all of those. And we got 19 write-in responses in total. And then just of note is that 4 of them mentioned tree preservation. And that was something that came up in our interview process as well, was tree preservation is something that people care about. And you can see as well, community gardens was one of the top kind of supported actions from this question. And so those things kind of tie together thematically as well.
I would briefly add to that while some of these responses that you see up here were pulled from literature about what actions are even feasible to do at the city level, we used our interviews to create these questions and create the answers. And so some of the responses you see up here are the result of themes that came out of interviews when we asked people just a broad open-ended question out of those 18 interviewees. What actions would you support? What do you think would be the right move on here? And so these aren't verbatim taken from there, but when we got similar answers and we saw trends over the course of interviews, we thought, let's see how many other Lakewoodians through our survey believe in the same thing. So we supplemented our research-based policies up here with those that seem to have popular support from our interview process.
So do I understand that, like in your full report, there's a longer list of responses? These are just the ones that you're choosing to highlight to us today. I guess in terms of ones that sort of emerged from interviews, and I'll just tell you the most surprising on this list was the community gardens response. Because I can think of a lot of values of community gardens by myself to be able to go and do that. And combating climate change just isn't one of them. So is this one of those that got on your list because a lot of people thought that it was a doable way that someone could take some personal action to deal with climate change?
This question kind of came out of this broader theme of people really valuing the green spaces in Lakewood. And just as a side note, within community gardens, composting does sequester carbon. So it is when people come together and they do methods such as composting or other garden methods that are greener, it does help make somewhat of an impact.
Okay, and I guess did any of your survey respondents define harm when you ask questions about harm? I mean, you said, how are you harmed? What did you learn about what people I saw the response about how have you been harmed or impacted? I know harm seemed an odd word to do that, but you didn't ask people to evaluate the possible negative impacts or prioritize them. But did you get a sense of what, from talking with people or reading that, what people were most concerned about happening?
I'll start with that and I'll invite my team to join in. So that I pulled up those two questions about harm on the screen here. And I want to let the council know that we limited free response questions on our survey because we wanted to make it more accessible to people who were taking it in a non-English language. If we got in a high number of Spanish or Korean responses on those translated surveys, that would have been excellent. And we would have had to find a way to translate them back into English to fit into our analysis. It's also more difficult when you add a free response option asking, how do you define harm? Climate harm, for example. We can't do a statistical analysis on that. We need a limited number of questions to see how many people chose which category. So I think that would be a great question for the city to continue exploring. How do you define harm? What about climate change concerns you the most to identify further resident priorities on this issue? But I'll also ask my team if anyone else has ideas.
I do, yeah. So it's a great question, and we could probably gather narratives or other qualitative information sources from that. But when we did our interviews, we only did about 20 of them, right? And that, when we looked at demographics, it was very clear it wasn't representative of the entire population of Lakewood. Usually they were people with higher salaries and had the time to actually sit down and talk with us. And not everyone in Lakewood can do that. And so by categorizing it in these 4 or 5 different levels and then putting it in a survey, we were able to distribute it and find, broader ideas within the community.
I had another idea that I would like to share, and that's briefly that when we talk about harm and we talk about the low marginalized community response rate on this, we talk about climate change policies in terms of adaptive policies and policies that mitigate climate change, policies that help you adjust, but also policies that help the city of Lakewood do less harm to the environment. People in Lakewood who come from a higher tax bracket may be able to afford some of those personal adaptations. When wildfire smoke season comes around, they may be able to afford improved windows and air conditioning and air purifying systems that prevent harm from happening to them. And so one of the recommendations we take in our final policy is looking at adaptive measures that the city can do that those low-income individuals can't afford on their own. How can we find ways to support them? Because if you can afford that on your own, that's wonderful, but we don't want to leave behind residents of Lakewood who can't afford those adaptive systems that maybe other neighborhoods can.
Well, in trying to do our best, a couple of years ago, we adopted a climate change update within our comprehensive plan that included a lot of policies, some of which we're acting on and some of which we'll get to. Okay, to be able to go and do that. Did you have a chance to look at that? And I guess what grade would you give us?
Yeah, yes, we did have a chance to look at it, which we were like genuinely very impressed that it exists for a city in Puget Sound, a city of this size, a city just yeah, with all the other challenges that Lakewood faces. We're very pleased that it existed. I don't think any of us ever talked about like, wow, like this would get, you know, an A, B, or C, but right, yeah. But I do think that when we were going through this study, a lot of times we did refer to that to see like, is this aligning what they are already planning to do or what they are already saying? Are we recommending something that's either repetitive or is counter what they are saying? So I do think that we think that this plan moving forward is that this study supplements that plan. It is not to say like this is wrong or this should be like discarded entirely or anything like that. But I don't know if the rest of my team had anything to add to that. But.
That was part of my question, and I'll ask it. You can all answer it a little bit too. Were the adaptive measures culled from the city's climate change chapter in a sense?
Some were, I'll be honest and say that was a long document, and some of the policies that we pulled are listed there, but they're also considered best practices for climate change adaptation that are not individual actions.
And I guess my last question is, I guess, you know, we're hoping to learn a lot from your work to us. But I'm curious what you learned from doing it. And maybe not so much in terms of climate change, but in terms of I assume maybe you're all in a public policy career path to be able to do that. I mean, did we do you a favor by making it available to you? And
I think one of the things that I benefited from was it's different from a classroom when you get an actual understanding from a work environment like this project was, that it is a challenge to hear from BIPOC and low-income communities and residents. Like that's something we read about and we hear about in our projects, like how can you incorporate equity into this project or to this, you know, this written paper, but doing it and understanding and kind of being able to empathize with city governments, Lakewood and others that like, oh, this is a challenge and there are ways that we can improve this, but it isn't as always, it isn't as easy as maybe a textbook might say. So I think that that'll be beneficial to us in whatever our next steps are, whether it be with city government. But I think we're all interested in the equity space and the environmental justice and climate justice space. So keeping what we learned from that experience in this project moving forward will be helpful. So, anyone else?
well, in addition to thanking you, we all wish you success in making a difference in your as you go about your work in the coming years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're all graduating in about 3 weeks.
Hint, hint, yeah, exactly. Well, I very much appreciate the presentation. I just had a couple of questions, but I'm going to let you go. The personal behavior change on page 16 of our packet was interesting because even though the discussion talked around systemic adaptive measures from a policy perspective, it was interesting to note from your research that 75% had changed their personal behavior to decrease the impact on the environment. And I was interested to know what measures individuals took personally, because I doubt all of the folks on the survey, purchased Teslas in the last 2 or 3 years. So what did you glean from that? What did they take upon themselves to do to mitigate the impacts of climate change?
I I can start us really briefly because my team members, we have to draw from memory on this because this was not a free response on our survey. So individual examples we got were all gleaned from our interview process. And there were certainly interesting examples. I think recycling was at the top of that list. People who own electric vehicles or who hope to when their vehicle, their current vehicle, you know, needs to be replaced. Does anyone else remember other examples from those?
Not to say that it's for everyone, but a few people were talking about having more plant-based diets, like reducing their meat or dairy intake as a way to mitigate climate change as a personal action.
Interesting. Well, that's just kind of helpful anecdotal information on the city actions. One of the ones that I thought was kind of curious. I'm also on the transit commission locally for Pierce Transit, and one of the lower percentages of respondents were seeking more public transit routes and infrastructure. I'm thinking, we're investing $250 million in bus rapid transit to mitigate, you know, traffic congestion and impacts on climate. And do these people care? You know, it's an interesting question, right?
It's very popular.
Yeah, I would love to actually touch on that because I think that honestly just speaks to the, as Cassidy mentioned, the sample size as well, because that was something that came up multiple times in our interview process was people's enthusiasm for the transit system as it currently is and hopes for expansion in the future. And then as we talked about, like electric vehicles was a huge, that was like a very popular topic in the interviews as well.
So obviously investing in transit is one of those community-based policies we should continue to pursue. Yeah, I would hope, despite the lower percentage of, but so. Well, thank you again. I just, you know, it's prescient that the Uncommon Ground magazine that we all have today that just came on our desk has a big article about sustainability and climate risk. So we could probably get a copy for you guys to enjoy and read, but it has a lot of great information in there about policy issues that other cities are grappling with, including issues with regard to flooding that we're addressing with the I-5 JBLM and the Nisqually Delta. You know, monies we're trying to get to study how we can better address climate change as it impacts the South Sound. So great work, and I hope you had fun. Yeah, well, thank you for being part of it. So we'll let you.
Happy graduation.
Yes, get ready to graduate. Okay, as we cycle through some chairs, next on our agenda tonight is a joint planning commission meeting, which will discuss the 2022-23 work plan with members of our planning commission. So come on up. And Mr. Larson, feel free to grab a chair and circle around wherever you guys want to sit here. And I'll let you, Mr. Pearson, introduce members of the committee and kind of walk through the work plan.
Yep, thank you. Ryan Pearson, Vice Chair of the Planning Commission, and I have Lynn Larson, Robert Estrada, and Paul Wagaman, all Planning Commission members with me. And then, yeah, taking a step through our 2022 Planning Commission work plan. Just giving a summary of items that we have addressed and some that, you know, kind of coming up in the future here towards the end of the year. We've had a really busy first couple of quarters. I guess we're not quite through this one, but seems like we should be, but yeah, just busy. So started off the year and Mr. Daniels was reelected as chair and myself as vice chair. And we have filled, I think Mr. Combs was at the end of last year, and Mr. Parsons, and I think Mr. Larson was last year as well. So we've had a little bit of turnover, but now we're back up to staff. So that's where we're at. Yeah, to start off quarter one, we reviewed the Planning Commission 2022 work plan. We reviewed the City Council 2021 to 2024 goals. And these are all items that we've completed in the first quarter. Reviewed the 2022 annual housing action plan and review of the Lakewood housing programs. And then getting and the economic development strategy draft plan. And then in second quarter, we began shoreline restoration activities plan review and review the proposed climate change implementation plan for the City Council direction. And that's been quite a undertaking from city staff. Mr. Buer's done a great job on putting together some Excel spreadsheets and all sorts of good stuff for us to look at. Let's see here, where was I? The 2022 comprehensive plan amendment docket, including rezoning parcel near St. Clair Hospital to preserve oak tree stand, Tillicum neighborhood plan, and center local importance update. Lakewood Municipal Code Titles 18A and 18C parking requirements, adult family homes and air corridor zones, and technical text and map updates to reflect adoption of the Vision 2050 and other city plans. So we've seen those a couple times throughout the year, and those are going to continue into the third quarter. And I think the most of that stuff I've mentioned should have come to you guys at some point by now. Let's see here, the 2021 buildable lands report and 2044 growth targets, 2023 through 2028 6-year transportation improvement program. I don't believe we've seen that one yet, but I think that should be coming up soon. Meadow Park 55 low income housing project, MFTE project. Recommendation on climate change implementation measures. And then getting into the third quarter is the tree preservation code. Let's see here. Review and development of recommendations on the 2023 comprehensive plan docket. And then review, and these items are going to be going into the fourth quarter. Review the city's housing policies and programs, and this includes the comprehensive plan goals, policies, and objectives, Title 18A, CDBG, Home, RHSP, and administrative policies. Periodic review of comprehensive plan map and text items in anticipation of the 2024 statutory update. Review and development of recommendations on annual development regulation amendment package. This is for technical edits to Lakewood Municipal Titles 18A through 18C and some others. And then the multifamily tax exemption code update. So lots on our plate for this year, and city staff's been very busy putting presentations together for us. So with that, I will open it up to you for any questions for us.
How many times are you folks meeting a month now to address what appears to be a fairly aggressive work plan?
Twice a month.
Do you feel like you're getting adequate time to review and chew on the meaty subjects?
Personally, I feel like maybe a third meeting wouldn't be a bad idea, or maybe a more of a study session or something that's kind of off to the side, just to kind of discuss items. But yeah, I think that we do what we can with what we have so far. So anyway,
Sure, yeah. Mr. Larson.
I would say also that work study sessions would be in order. It seems like the only time we get to really have a discussion is in the public meeting, and sometimes I don't think we feel as free to explore alternatives and ideas that we might otherwise do if we had the opportunity to toss stuff around.
Sure.
Mr. Estrada.
So we do have an opportunity to review quite a few documents. I mean, documents range from anywhere from 25 pages to 225 pages for each meeting.
Welcome to the party.
Well, I didn't want to feel left out, so I was joining you. But pretty comprehensive, the information that were provided. But to grasp it all just like overnight or in a few days is tough to do.
Yeah.
It's tough to do. And therefore, I guess I have to agree with you all that we probably could use another day to mull over.
Got it. And I just want to note, Mr. Parsons is on Zoom. Mr. Parsons, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. You know, I would just like to add that along with Mr. Larson Pearson, similar, I think having an extra session would be helpful. We are dealing with a significant amount of information and a significant amount of policies we're trying to work through. So I would also second adding a work session to our schedule. I think that would be helpful.
To help you with your work on the work plan, is there any other policy guidance that would be helpful from council? Or do you think you have enough feedback from us to do your work to make the recommendations that come back to us for review?
Yeah, I think we have enough information to work through things, but yeah, I think that extra time to kind of, work amongst each other and discuss things would be helpful, moving things forward.
I'm going to open up to my fellow council members for any questions on the work plan. Certainly, we want to express our appreciation for all the work you have done. It goes without saying that this is a volunteer appointed position for which we are very appreciative of your individual expertise. You were selected because you have a particular expertise or experience in the community in a different role that you all fulfill. And collectively, that experience and those opportunities to express judgment on the issues at hand is very helpful to us. So, any questions? Mr. Branstad.
Thanks, Mayor. I really appreciate the time and effort that you all put in, and that it certainly is really helpful to me and to the rest of the council to know that things have been looked at with a variety to do that. But to follow up on the mayor's question, I think you sort of take a lot from what we as a council publish as goals. We have 20 want to do that. But do we sort of put those at too high of an altitude? I mean, are we giving you goals that are 10,000 foot things without a whole lot of specifics or direction? Or is that actually preferable to you?
Yeah, everything that I think you guys pass down our way goes through Ms. Spear and Mr. Buer, and so they kind of take that and decipher it into a way to have us have meaningful discussions and be able to work through some things. So I don't think anything's coming through it at different levels that we're not on or anything. So.
Well, the history of your group was, at one time it was 3 groups. We had a transportation group and a redevelopment group and a planning land use group to do that, and we merged them all into the planning commission. The one, because there was crossover between the work of the groups and being able to go and do that, but it does lead to work plans like the one that you have to be able to go. But in your memo, there is what are essentially extracts from the ordinance that creates the planning commission about the areas that we're asking for you to assist us in. And they haven't been updated in a while, you know. I would just venture to say that if you look at it and there are things that we've now come to be asking you for, that aren't there, okay? Or that become sort of the norm in terms of doing it, you know. The council, we did a policy that committed to the community to using a lens that would ensure that we didn't inadvertently disadvantage some of the populations in our city as we went and did things. And we didn't necessarily reinforce that to you by changing it in your in the ordinance that establishes you to be able to go and do that. And while climate change is mentioned here, it's, as you've heard previously in this meeting and as you're going on, that, you know, that's become a another focus, and you're going to be looking at it as respect because we put it in the comprehensive plan, so it came to be yours. But I think if you look forward to what all we're asking you to do, I guess I would tell you not to be shy about saying when it's too much, and when you think that maybe something could be handled by someone else or going on. I mean, yeah, and it's good that there's apparently a willingness to meet even more often than you are now. If you can get a format that would make productive use of that other time. And I understand very formal public meetings. I mean, we as a council benefit from having a study session like this and then having a formal meeting of where we've got to comply with Robert's rules and other things. So I think that as you looking ahead to the next year, if there are some things that you would like to change in the guidance to you, or that you do, please pass that back to us, so that we just don't keep going off to do that.
But it's not just us. It's staff that does the legwork, the groundwork. So maybe it also impacts them, your all's direction. So maybe we should ask them also, are they in a position to, or to do all this and then pass it on to us? Just a comment.
And do you think that we're asking too much of too few staff?
I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's always a concern that we have. Is are there enough hands and minds to do the work that we need to do as a city to be able to go up and do that? All right, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Boking.
So I'm the council liaison, and all the statements are very good. I would just add, and I think Member Estrada's point is well taken, that there is, I think, a log jam, and there is a staff level of work that needs to be done. So if we add meetings, that, we can talk in esoteric terms about meetings, but unless, it's really everyone else trying to figure out how to make that work. I would just say that the climate, in my humble opinion, when I'm looking at it, is the climate change chapter and now coming down the pike, the tree one, are both massive pieces, especially the climate change. Because we pulled out 86 items or something, and it's in my mind almost unworkable. I mean, it's really trying to get so staff is having to do, coming back to report to the planning commission and trying to narrow this thing down into certain things. But I just think starting with whatever we started with, which is, and maybe I'm wrong, hopefully I'm wrong, but 86 items or whatever, didn't do anybody any favors. And I don't know that, you know, where we're going with this, and it is eating up a lot of staff and a lot of planning commission time. So our approach to how we're doing that climate change chapter has I think helped kind of put sand in the gears of the whole operation. In my mind, that's my opinion. But and then I think that because I think that it's just a huge, massive piece of legislation. Really, it's almost taking on almost its own, almost like comp plan. It's like asking them to, hey, take a look and redo the comp plan, and it's almost a similar kind of thing. And I think we might have, our directions to them might have been more than what everybody can chew through. That's, you know, you certainly can argue and disagree with me because it's your work, but I'm also looking at it from as a council member and watching staff have to do a lot of work and just trying to narrow things down and put them into kind of bite-sized pieces. And I'm not sure where this is all going.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
I agree with Councilmember Boche. We're given a lot of information to digest, and then in a public forum expected to espouse an opinion when we haven't had the opportunity to discuss it among ourselves and to reach a consensus. And next thing I'm going to say is one of those things that I have not discussed with any of my fellow members, but one really important thing for us is having good, valuable, actionable information. And we were recently presented with a tree study, and there was so much left out of it, and I wondered why. And then I looked at how the people who were chosen to be on that committee, and they were all people that were interested in that particular issue and furthering their perspectives one way or the other. But there was a whole large part of the community that was not taken into consideration for balanced view. And I started thinking, okay, how we solve that? And I don't know how you go about choosing the members that make up these study committees that are charged with these important tasks. But being a member of several service clubs over the years, I'm thinking that maybe they should be asked to bring some comment to or to make up these committees, to bring, you know, Rotarians and Eagles and Lions and people that are interested already in serving the community to have a stake or a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And some aspect like that gives us the ability to have good, balanced information from which to move forward. And the stream team would be a similar example. So that would be one thing that council could provide us with better information when it's citizen derived. And while I have the mic, I have to thank the students for a great presentation and good information. And I know they all learned how you do a study and how you try to get information when it's difficult to get from different populations.
Well,
it's work.
I appreciate that. And let me just give you an anecdotal response on the Tree Preservation Code Review Subcommittee. There was much work by a subcommittee of the council to cull through all the applications to do exactly that, which was to get a wide spectrum of voices. And even going through that process, there were folks on one particular spectrum that felt it was doomed to failure because it wasn't focused on one side versus the other enough for that person's perspective or a group of people. So it's, you know, it's really difficult to hit it out of the park and hit a triple on every endeavor that we try. But it's interesting because it depends on where you sit on that spectrum as to whether you thought it was balanced one way or the other or not balanced. So, but your point is well taken. And we continue to try to bring together a diversity of voices on all of these citizen subcommittees as best we can. based on the applications received, right? So, but again, your point is well taken. Mr. Wegeman.
The bottom line is that this planning commission, we're totally advisory. And so we work with the staff and we listen to that. And so we're a filter before it comes to you. But ultimately, you're the decision makers as the council for our community. And what's the goal? For the common good, right? That's what we're all looking for, the common good. So the more voices we can hear, the better chance we have of coming to something that's the common good. Certainly we can, we talked about climate change. There used to be glaciers here at one time. So climate's changed a lot since we've lived here. And where does it go in the future? Don't know. And how much impact do we have on that? But what we want and some of the goals that I've seen from this city council is they want a livable community. And so we're doing some things that make that. I mean, people maybe not like concrete, but having a good walk path around Gravelly Lake, I think will challenge the people that used to go up and walk at Chambers Bay, maybe walking down here now. So that's, to me, is a livable community. I think the other thing that the council has had us look at is the homeless situation. In other words, affordable housing. We've had some discussion there. Some of the discussions that I've really enjoyed is how much parking, and then how about mixed use housing? Can you mix people with higher incomes with people with lower incomes? Mr. Coombs has really got some very interesting ideas on that they've done up in Seattle that work. And so that to me was very, very encouraging. And then as has already been mentioned here, we talked about the tree issue, I mean, they came up and said we need 40% coverage. That was one of the plans that came out. Well, if 40 is good, would 50 be better? Or is 35 better? Those are some questions we have to ask. But one of the things that Mr. Coombs and I both pointed out is trees don't last forever. And we're trying to treat almost to the place where we want to worship trees because they're going to last forever, but they're not. So the question is how long can we make a tree last? Does an arborist know how to do that? Is what's the right amount of pruning you do on a tree? But things in our community that make it frustrating for some of our neighbors is a tree grows up and all of a sudden it blocks your view of Mount Rainier. That's pretty frustrating. So how do we protect views? But then the other thing, limbs fall out of trees and put holes in roofs. Roots grow up, and I've worked several projects where foundations have been jacked up by the roots of a tree. So they're not also good, but trees are wonderful. Who hates a tree? I don't. And so the question is how do we get that balance that, and do you like deciduous trees? You like fir trees? Most of us don't like trees when we're cleaning our gutters, and so those are all things that have to be discussed as we work. And then we put a plan together to help provide energy. So if the way to go is solar panels, when you put a solar panel on a house, one of the things when they come out and look is they look for trees, and they don't like trees because trees put shade on solar panels, and that means you get no electrical power. So how do you balance those kinds of things? I mean, is having electrical panels that help is not a bad thing.
That's what we look forward to you two all of you to help us with when that recommendation comes before you to review from the subcommittee. But you're all good points.
And so, but ultimately it's you. And so we're part of that advisory committee, and, and I'll have to jump on board here. I mean, Dave Buer and Karen and Tiffany, they do a wonderful job providing information to us. And, I'm sure they get frustrated with it at times too, but they keep the ball rolling, and that's a good thing. Are they overworked? I don't know. You have to ask them. But I appreciate what they do for us to help us try to understand some of the issues that are in front of our city. So thank you.
Well, thank you all. And I think this is a good, robust discussion on how we need to temper expectations about work product sometimes, because we all get a lot going on and we're all trying to do the right thing by way of the public and move their goals and objectives forward. So we can do what we can. It's interesting. There are a lot of other cities around that don't even have planning staff to any significant extent. And we're very lucky in the city to have really good planning staff, but we don't want to make them completely overworked to the point where we can't get good policy. But I don't think we're there yet. Any other questions for the folks, good folks on the Planning Commission? Again, appreciate all your hard work. We'll double your pay in 2023. Oh, yeah, exactly. So thanks again for coming. Mr. Parsons, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Well, next we will get a PowerPoint presentation from the Pierce County Specialized Recreation Program with Jen Spain, Recreation Supervisor for Pierce County, Spain.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Spanny, Recreation Supervisor with Pierce County Parks and Recreation. I brought with me Jen Sargent, Recreation Coordinator, and our friend Lauren, and her mother, Deborah. And so I'm not sure if you know this, but in January, the city of Lakewood joined a partnership with with Pierce County Parks and Recreation to basically overhaul the special needs recreation for the county. Now, when you think about recreation for individuals with special needs, it's a finite group of people. So for every city to have their own department to work with special needs individuals is a huge undertaking. It's not only expensive because of the equipment you need to have, but you're looking at a very specialized staff that you need to hire. So Pierce County over the last 2 years has formed participating jurisdictions, and Tacoma Metro Parks is a part of it. The city of Lakewood is a part of it. Puyallup and the city of Sumner are a part of it. And so what we're able to do is come into your community, provide these very specific recreation programs to your citizens within your city, and be able to help out in that way. And so we have a little PowerPoint presentation about what it is we do and why it is important. So today we're going to talk about what is specialized recreation and why is it needed? What is the current need within Pierce County? A brief history of specialized recreation in Pierce County. We'll meet our staff. Jen will have a chance to talk and talk about our current activities offered throughout our specialized recreation program. So specialized recreation is a niche part of recreation, and what we do is we offer recreation to anybody who needs it. And when they come to our facility, we adapt what we do to meet their needs. So if it's someone who has a hearing impairment or visual impairment or a cognitive delay of some kind, we're there to meet their needs every activity. And it's very unique in that way, because if you go to a typical park and recreation program, that adaptation isn't always there for the individuals. That's right. And unfortunately, due to COVID, there are very few agencies that are able to support this. When COVID hit, a lot of recreation kind of folded in some ways, and they weren't able to continue on with their specialized recreation programming. So that's where we saw a need and we advanced and we took that need and jumped on it. According to our director, there's approximately 1,000 households within Pierce County that we serve. So it's 1,000. So just think of that and think about how hard that it would be for every community to serve one or two families. They might even be different age groups or different ability levels. So when we were able to create this partnership, we were able to say, we'll take these 1,000 households and we'll provide the recreation for everybody. Participants were then traveling all over the county to get to where they needed to go. So now with Lakewood as one of our participating jurisdictions, your participants, they only have to go to Lakewood if they want. They can still come to Puyallup and Sumner and Tacoma if that's where a program is that they would like, but they can stay home. The other great thing is it's bringing people into your community and it's bringing people into your parks that maybe would not have had an opportunity to see one of your parks because they lived in a different part of the county. A brief history of specialized recreation in Pierce County. We were one of the first departments to start a specialized recreation department. We introduced a camp called Camp Lots of Fun. It's one of our more popular camps that has been running for a very long time, over 50 years. And we became the first public agency in the area to offer programming. And that's where we met Lauren, is at Camp Lots of Fun. In fact, at Camp Lots of Fun, you can't come if you're past the age of 21. And Lauren was begging me to let her stay and let her keep coming back after she was 21. Shortly after Camp Lots of Fun was introduced, Metro Parks Tacoma, they started their specialized recreation and they focused more on the adults, where Pierce County Parks at that time focused on the youth. Like I said, we can't do this without our staff. We have two coordinators, Jen Sargent and Carly Schwimmer, who isn't able to be here today. We also have 4 AmeriCorps volunteers and a handful of, about 6 staff who work with us, and they come highly trained and highly sought after. Our staff are always, our coworkers always want to borrow our staff for events because they're really, really fun. And then next I'll have Jen talk about activities offered through Pierce County Parks.
Hi, and thank you for allowing us to come in and speak with you all about our programs. It's really exciting. I absolutely love our programs. I've been working with Pierce County Parks specifically in specialized recreation for almost 15 years now. Okay. So this is it is my passion project, and I love to speak about it. So I will do my best not to ramble on. But just speaking specifically about programming that we are currently hosting within Lakewood, I think speaks volumes about what we're offering now. We offer a program within Lakewood almost every single day of the week. In fact, we just finished one, I'm looking at the clock, not too long ago, right up at the street at the Lakewood Community Center, called Grit City Piers Crew. It's just a social program. They'll come in, take care of their socialization for the day, kind of catch up with friends, meet some new friends, play a game, maybe have a sport or a craft activity. On Tuesdays, we have a very popular art program. Yeah, Lauren loves the art program that we host every Tuesday morning in Lakewood. Let's see, Wednesday, we actually take a day off in Lakewood briefly. And Thursday, we have an even more popular program called the Hangout, which again is a socialization program. And that one is currently being masterminded, so to speak, by our AmeriCorps volunteers. They have a different theme every single day. Just this last Thursday, we had a Local Heroes Day where we invited members from the Lakewood Police Department to come by. We had Central Pierce fire and rescue come by. We even had Hansel the arson dog come by. Lauren loved Hansel the arson dog. Had a really great time. They learned about personal safety. They learned about home safety. And then again, of course, what all of our first responders, what their roles are within our community. And then on Fridays, we have a low impact aerobics. So we can manage to keep our bodies moving, stretched out, get some physical activity at least once a week. Then on Saturday, we keep kind of rolling with that, and we hold a functional fitness, which is really just basketball skills. We initially tried to have that as kind of a circuit training for our participants, but it came to be pretty quickly well known that all they really wanted to do is play basketball. So we still call it functional fitness, but now it's basketball skills. And I should also mention on Tuesdays, I completely forgot, Tuesdays, we are also hosting bowling at Bolero Lanes. And we just actually started doing that in the last couple of months, and it has been crazy popular. We weren't sure what kind of a response we were going to have. Bolero was going to be a new bowling alley for us, and it is super popular. I think we're at close to 40 people coming every Tuesday night to bowl. Oh, was it almost 50? It's almost 50 people coming now to bowl with us at Bolero Lanes. So it is quite the undertaking. We are certainly stressing the resources that they can offer us there, and we are ever so grateful for their help with that. In addition to just those programs, again, those are just our weekly ongoing programs. We are looking at hosting Camp Pierce. I'm going to click over to my next slide there, which says Club Pierce, and Club Pierce is a year-round, twice-a-week program that's very similar to Camp Pierce. And both of those programs are geared towards the young adult age, so 20 and older, to come out, hang out, and learn some life skills while volunteering within the community. We obviously took a little bit of a break from the volunteering in the community through COVID, but we are getting back out there now, and I hope to have our volunteerism go back up. Each one of our participants then take home a volunteer handbook or a portfolio that shows all of their volunteer work. They can take that with them then to their job coaches, onto additional volunteer opportunities that they might be presented with, just to kind of show their skill set and what it is that they have worked on. We also, go on fun field trips, because what would a camp program be without field trip? We work on some kitchen skills. We work on taking mass transit, and not just the Pierce shuttle bus, but the Pierce bus, the large buses, as well as the Sounder train, the Link, all of the ferries, as many different kinds of mass transportation as we can get, just to kind of expose our campers to that opportunity. We obviously play sports and crafts and arts and everything else that goes along with a regular summer day camp program that we've sort of extended again year round. And at the bottom of this particular slide, and I hope that you all have all received a copy of this in some fashion, but there is a link there where it says Standing Ovation Award Camp Pierce video. I highly recommend taking a look at it. It is several years old. We'll admit to that part of it, but it does a much better job of kind of digging in and showcasing what Camp Pierce and Club Pierce, or at that time it was called Club TGIF, brings to the community and to our participants and our campers. And it's actually a lot of fun. Does a much better job of explaining it than I do. I feel like I've caught everything. Do you have more to add?
Yeah, just real quick on the slide before. A Standing Ovation Award is an award of excellence given out through Pierce County government. And Jen and I have been blessed to receive 2 of those. So if you have an opportunity to watch the videos that's embedded in these slides, you'll really get a chance to see this one, the Standing Ovation virtual programs. This was kind of the catalyst to the participating jurisdiction umbrella that was created. And then the one for Club Pierce just really shows you our participants and their love and our staff. And so it's kind of 2 fun feel-good videos. And do you guys have any questions for us? Or Lauren, would you like to talk about the program?
I just love these ladies. They're so amazing putting these programs together. And I just love being my friends, and I so appreciate them putting this poem dance together this Saturday. It was so awesome.
We had a huge dance this past Saturday, but it was our biggest event. Over 100 participants came to the Tacoma Yacht Club and danced all afternoon, and they danced.
That's great. Well, thank you, Lauren, for coming, and thank you, ladies. This is fantastic information. I have not known as much about this specialized program before, and maybe this is a question for Ms. Dodsworth. How many Lakewood folks participate in this specialized recreation program, typically on a monthly or annual basis?
So I have a lot of data, and the data is all over the place. But what I can tell you is from Q1, that's January, February, March, you had 13 unique participants. But what we're finding is that our participants come 3, 4, 5, 20 times. Jen and Carly have done an amazing job of having one program built upon another program. So participants can ride Pierce Transit Shuttle to the Lakewood Community Center in the morning and stay all day. And they can be a part of a couple different activities. And so I don't have the data of how many times the Lakewood citizens are coming back, but I can tell you, you are the 4th largest jurisdiction that participates in that, including all jurisdictions that aren't under our umbrella. It'd be like Gig Harbor, Key Pen, DuPont. We have someone from Oregon.
So do we participate financially in the program? Okay, great. And then I assume it's noticed, the opportunity is noticed to residents in a meaningful way so that folks who are interested in these programs certainly would know about them and know where to go.
Putting it within the community. We are recently adding it to the connections because we're a new partner. It wasn't our program, so we didn't specifically program it in the past, but with this new collaboration and cooperative program, we are supporting that as best we can with, the size and resources that we have. And we are getting monthly reports, and so we can add that to our performance measures. And so that way, then we can share that on a quarterly basis with you as to how we're doing. And it was a new program this year. You supported it through the carry forward budget, I think, or mid-year budget adjustment. And then we'll be looking at, what's the need? How's the program growing? Because there is this, program growth by just having that more opportunities for different kinds of programs.
Word
And then
spreads.
and then they work with the school district, and they work with lots of different, going to the places where those families are getting services. And then we can say, hey, these are some extra resources that you can do, and you can do them locally now, where before they might have had to go to Tacoma or go to another facility. They can do it. And they're doing it primarily at the Lakewood Community Center. They utilize the gym, not the area that we are not able to access for the senior program, in case you're wondering why they're doing that there and we're not. They are accessing different parts of the building that are accessible, like the gym, and then there's another little meeting room. So
my last question is transportation. How are folks getting to the community center? Is it Pierce Transit?
Yeah, primarily it's Pierce Transit. I would say about half is Pierce Transit.
A lot of that is direct pickup to the facility, right? Good.
And I did want to mention just the program overall. Last month, we had 1,121 participants. That's multiple people coming through. And we served them for over 2,763 hours. And that was just in a month.
But the impact is hard to measure because it's so great. Really, that's fabulous. Questions, other questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to monopolize, but I had a few on the top of mind. Ms. Bell and then Mr. Branstetter.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Thank you so much. I have
worked with specialized with people who run the programs, and our programs are always full, always packed, and people just get so much from them. So I just want to thank you for your time and your effort with this, and I'm really happy that Lakewood is a part of this.
Yeah, you may have mentioned it, but I didn't catch it. Generally, what's the ages of your participants?
That's the fun part, is that we offer programs from ages 3 to as old as you want to be. And, but primarily right now, the bulk of our participants are between the ages of 21 and 31. We're having a hard time finding the youth. We think with COVID, that kind of scared parents. So we're really focusing on bringing the youth back and our group homes. But that 21 to 31 is a huge age bracket for us.
That there any particular community partners, either corporate or nonprofit or things that are doing good support for your program? And particularly, are there any in Lakewood that maybe we ought to recognize?
Out of Lakewood, I don't believe so. We did receive a CDBG grant from Pierce County Human Services. They've been tremendously helpful in kickstarting the communities into this position.
Okay.
I'd actually like to add that a couple, gosh, it's been 4 or 5 years ago, but we did actually receive, Camp Pierce did receive an award from the Emergency Food Network for our support and our work with them. We were nominated and I believe won an award, Volunteer Group of the Month, I believe, with our Camp Pierce program. So that is one of the community partners that we do work with periodically when we're working on our volunteer work through both Clip Pierce and Camp Pierce.
Thank you.
Anything else we go to the order? Fantastic. Thank you all for coming tonight and for giving us such a great informative overview on a very worthwhile project. So thank you, Ms. Donsworth. Have fun. Look forward to maybe seeing you at Bolero. Okay, how are we all doing? Does anybody need a stretch break for a minute before we go to the next item? You want to do that? Why don't we take 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get the next group up? We're going to call on our folks who are involved in the Fort Silicon Park Turf Infield Project expansion. So feel free to get on up, and a few of us might take a quick 2-minute break to get a cup of coffee, and we'll join you. Friends, we are back. We are back. We are back. And so we have the illustrious Mary Dodsworth to lead us through this erstwhile topic, so we can come to a final conclusion and selection.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Whalen and Deputy Mayor and City Council members. So we're excited to be here. We have a whole team of folks here to update you on what's happening, provide additional information, answer your questions as needed. Kind of the option or the plan of action is to give you kind of a summary of where we were and where we are and where we're at with the project. We have representatives from Pierce College here. We have Dr. White and Duncan Stevenson to provide some information from the Pierce College side. We have Vito Iacobazzi here. He's our vice chair of our Park and Rec Advisory Board. So he'll give you some updates as to the meeting that we had with the Park Board on there. And then Eric Gold, who is the designers virtually coming in. And so he can if there's some technical information or a piece of the design that you needed additional information. So we've got the whole team here to help us move forward with this project. So we're excited to get started. And Stacy's here too, Stacy Redding. She's our capital projects coordinator. So she could talk to you about permits or anything else that's going on. So there should be enough people here to get us started. So tonight we are kind of giving you an update on the Pierce College home field. We've chatted with you several times about it. So we're not going to go into too much detail about the specifics, but just to note that the history has been we've been working on this project for several years. We were fortunate to get a legislative allocation. We also got a state grant to start by replacing the infields with turf at Fort Steilacoom Park on the 4 fields at Fort Steilacoom Park. When we were kind of celebrating that success, Pierce College approached us and said, hey, we have been working, we started at Fort Steilacoom Park in the 70s with the baseball program, and it's grown, and they have a very amazing program, great reputation, but they've been searching for a home field for years and years and years. And the idea of, what do you think about us kind of enhancing one of the fields to be a home field? So we brought it to council, brought it to the park board. Everybody thought that was a great idea. So we started moving forward with that. Then we kind of came together and said, hey, we have $1.6 million. They said, we'll put in $1.6 million to do our project. And here's all the things that we want to do. And everybody thought that would be a great idea. We hired DA Hogan, Eric Gold with DA Hogan. All they do is collegiate fields and sports fields. They're great. We wanted to get the best. So we really had all of the information that we needed to do it right. So they started doing the design and the expectations of what we wanted to do. And when we started looking at the cost, it was more than 1.6 million for the home field. We were fine on our infields. We knew what we were doing on the price with that, but it was more, the home field was going to cost more for what the expected design elements were going to be. And so that's when we came back to say, hey, it's going to be a bigger budget than we initially expected. Pierce College is happy to pay for those additional resources because they are paying the full cost of developing this home field. And that's when a whole lot of other questions started being asked. We'd been talking about it for quite some time, but we were really getting into the details. So a lot more questions came up from council. And so you see those, we listed those with a lot of answers, but the suggestion was to bring it back to the park board. So we did, and we did that in March. And, or pardon me, we talked to you in March, we brought it back in April. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit about what their thoughts were and the information that we came together. So just as a quick summary, that's the history. So from an orientation perspective, I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So you have, I don't know if this little mouse, oh, here it goes. Yeah. So here's the main entrance to the park. Steilacoom Boulevard's up above. There's the ball field parking lot, we call it. So this is field 1, field 2, field 3, and field 4. And the reason field 3 looks bigger than the other 2 is because when we started this planning process, we were saying that the home field would be on field 3. But just wanted to give you that as a field location orientation. So when we're referring to the different fields, you know what we're talking about there. So just as a note, we're talking about a full-sized collegiate field. We're looking at not just turf on the infield, but the idea is to turf the infield and the outfield. We're going to have fencing around it to secure the facility, as well as to keep the balls from flying out into the public. There'll be utility improvements to support things like lights and irrigation and scoreboards. We have, we're looking at putting in a scoreboard with, home of the Raiders, Pierce College. We were talking about putting in enhanced dugouts. Thank you, Duncan. Enhanced dugouts with some storage, seating. Right now there's seating for about 160. We're adding about 90 places, but it would be ADA accessible, wraparound bleachers that would have a press box behind it. We'd be talking about adding a batting facility with storage, so you could do batting practice and training. And then adding field lighting just for this field, not for all of the fields. And of course, a flagpole. So really, what we're really talking about tonight is, first of all, the park board was asked several questions. And one of them was, do we move forward with this project? Because for some, it seemed a little bit like, are we really going to do this? Is this the right thing to do at this park? And so that was one of the questions. There was some question about, do we stick with Pierce College color scheme for their field? That seemed to be come up quite a bit during the council conversation. And then the last thing was, which field do we choose? Pierce College's preference is field 1 because they can do a full-size field there with all of the specifications. And that location, there's more space because of just the distance between the current backstop that's there, which would stay on all of them. And then, or field 3, which based on, that's right where the road curves, there'd be a little bit on the right field, right line field, and a little bit in center field. There'd be a bit of a modification there. And we'll talk about that in a sec. So what we did was we put some visuals together to give you perspective. We did encourage all of you to go out to the field and look. We have the outfield fencing up now that we use seasonally. That's taken down in late July, early August, when sort of the tournament play is done. So the outfield fencing, of course, would still be temporary, except for the home field fencing would be up permanently because it'd be real permanent fencing. So we provided some visuals here, and I'm going to try, there we go. So we had, because we were really planning on field 3, we were putting visuals together for field 3. And so you'll see some of these things in the back that look a little bit, you can see, here's when you're standing, we're at the end of the parking lot, here's our restroom building. So this would be field 3 as it looks today. And then the proposed improvements, you can see fencing and lights with the dugouts and all of that. So that would be the visual from that perspective. The next perspective is if you were driving from the entry towards the playground, so to speak. This is the curve in the road. You can see this is the current look with the fencing there. And this is what it would look like with the windscreen enhanced fencing. Here's the scoreboard and the flagpole. So that would be the backside. And the idea is when you're driving down this road going to the playground, you're getting ready to curve here. So your vision is really moving down with the road. So again, less visual impact from that corner. Also, there's a grade differentiation between fields 2 and 3. So it's dropped about 2 feet. So again, your perspective at the road is about, it would be 2 feet lower. This is if you were coming from the playground, now you're heading back to the front of the park. And this is again, coming to that corner from here. You can see that this is the current field as you would see it today. And then this would be with the enhanced fencing up there. There was some suggestion about what the look would be like from Steilacoom Boulevard. And so you can see there is quite a bit of buffer between Steilacoom Boulevard and the path. And then there's, the open space area and turf. And then this would be field 3 and field 4 back here. This is actually the vault that goes to the restrooms right here in case you're following along in locations. And then this is a park view that we were looking at. It's kind of about the same location, but this is almost to the end of, I think there were some questions about, what about this open space? Are we gonna lose this continuity of space between the front of the park and the end? And you can see, this is from field, at the end of field 3, that there's, plenty of space between there and Angle Lane. There's quite a bit of open space for spontaneous play. So this is a view from the front, and you can see we put a couple of pictures together, but it's to give you a perspective regarding the front gate. This is if you're coming, the front entrance is right here, and right when you enter, you see this rule sign. So you can see this right now is field 1, and you can see the fence that's there. There is quite a bit of space. It's a little bit, disoriented because of where we're at, but you can see there's quite a bit of space from the front gate to where the this part of the field, this is like where the soccer field would be, and this would be field number 1. So there's a bit of space there. And then this is looking from, here's the front gate down here, and this is the parking lot. And so you can see, even with the full-size field here, there's still quite a bit of open field from this area of the parking lot down. This would be where the, it would go all the way to here and close up, but this would be field one, utilizing field one. The other thing to think about, and we didn't bring this up before, but it's been, we've been having this conversation is that Public Works is working on an Elwood Road trail that'll be basically putting in a meandering trail through these trees. We've actually started it in case you've been out in the park. WTA came in and did a bunch of work there, and it's really a lovely pathway, but they'll be doing a pathway through here all the way down to Angle Lane and then looking at sidewalks down there. So the idea is this is a really kind of an awkward entrance. As you know, you come from Safeway, Silicon Boulevard, you come down here and you got to kind of zig and zag to go down there. You turn into here. This is the main entrance. And so of course, this is where field one would be. So the idea is that there is conversation regarding cleaning this up right here, maybe a traffic circle or something like that. So it would kind of change the orientation and the look as you're entering into the park. So that could also be helpful. And also directionally getting people to know when you come in, do I go left? Do I go right? Where's, how do I get here and there? So anyway, that where I clean that up. And then the idea too is all the roads in Fort Steilacoom Park have been repaved, except for this little spot from here to here. So the idea is to how do we, just clean that up and pave that. And that would be sort of the big finale to all the roads in the park. Oops. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Trees are staying, right?
The trees are all staying, yeah. In fact, if you go there now, yes, please, yes. We're not taking out any trees, no trees. Yeah, and if you look, so this is, you can see this is kind of a straight line of fir trees, obviously planted about the same time. They're all the same age. And here it's a little bit more thick in growth. So we've gone from, we started at the back end back by like the dog park back door entrance. And so WTA's come in here. In fact, I was just showing Vito some pictures. You can go out there and see they've done it. It's all meandering through the trees. There are no trees taken out. It's a 10-foot wide path. It's fantastic. And so the idea is,
Have they made it already?
yeah,
They just told us a month ago. What happened?
well, we don't wait around. We get some stuff done.
Nothing happened
And
that fast.
well, when you're using volunteers, it does, and we didn't have to pay them. And so they came out for 2 days one day for 1 day of orientation, and then they did it in 2 days. It's really fantastic. And so they're going to keep working with us on that. And the idea was to sort of, people love this park. And so change is hard. And so we kind of started doing, people have been really positive about it, right? Because it's meandering through the trees and you're not impacting, and because otherwise you were just walking down the road. There wasn't any shoulders, so.
But it's on the left side of the trees or the right?
I beg your
side?
pardon?
Is
It's
it on the
meandering
left
through
side?
the trees, right through here.
I'm talking about the straight line of trees.
Oh, Public Works will have to work on that, but it'll be meandering in some fashion. I mean, look at,
That's the bike.
I would say it's to the left, yeah, because
Hmm.
there's a gully and then the shoulder on the right side, yeah. Okay.
is that bike? ped money?
Yeah.
Is that, he was asking about, is that bike, this is Public Works bike ped money or something?
Got it, okay.
Yes, there's quite a large right of way there.
Yep.
And the other thing is we're going to be looking at adding some entrances there that'll help with our flow in and out, like Summerfest and large events, because there's such a backlog when we come in and out. So it's going to be like a 3-for-1. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Mr. Caulfield.
Mayor and council, the funding source for the sidewalks on Elwood and rather on Angle Lane that would then connect into Elwood here along Fort Steilacoom is a TIB Complete Streets Grant.
Got it, but this pathway is concrete, right? It's gonna be like a gravel pathway?
To be determined,
Yeah, we haven't.
to be determined.
Got it, okay,
The pathway that we did is just hard surface with probably chips on it, just to,
okay,
again, set the tone.
got
I
it,
beg- It will be eventually. Mhm.
okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
the-
side note, but
Yeah.
the idea is that there will be some changes to the entrance anyway that will make this, we anticipate, council hasn't approved a design, it hasn't even been designed, but the idea is many years ago, well, the 2010 study that we did actually looked at doing some kind of a roundabout change here. That was 10, when we were doing this economic development feasibility study, we did the golf course study. And then when Public Works came in and helped us with the road paving projects, they looked at this entrance and said, boy, wouldn't it be great to do something here? And again, that's several years ago, so we're just coming back to that. So there's no real design, but the idea is they're gonna fix it or do something that'll make it more flowful. Make traffic flow better.
That's a traffic. Is
Yeah.
it possible that that would be done either prior to the completion of the ball field? So
Probably.
that it's
I don't
got
know.
really
Probably
good
not.
traffic flow?
Probably not, but the idea is, we do little bits and pieces and in the end, it'll all be something fabulous. But the idea is just, again, the concern regarding, this is the entrance. Again, just to let you know that there'll be some changes there as well throughout the year. So if you didn't have any more specific questions about this, Vito's here, Vito Iacobazzi. He's been on our park board for quite some time. He is an amazing park board member, retired from Metro Parks Tacoma, and he was just going to share with you sort of the results of our park board meeting.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I usually don't come because Jason's always
Yeah.
here. This is good, thank you. So just quickly, our recommendations, we, as a park board, we all like this project. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's on. As a park board, we all like this project. We think it's a great project. We think the partnership is going to be wonderful into the future and it'll be good for all of us as a community. We had, Mary kind of went over at the presentation in April. It was good. It was great. Mary had this presentation. We had a lot of good discussion. We had folks from Pierce College that shared their thoughts and answered more questions than we probably had, gave us a lot of good information. So that was wonderful. The park board, upon that, we had good discussion. We debated a lot of topics and from there we move forward. We think this needs to move forward. We need to build this field. We're perfectly fine with the colors. That's a small item. They're going to have some kind of signage there that's going to identify that field. So the colors are appropriate. The one thing that the park board did end up going towards is we were kind of split on field 1, field 3. And the primary reason is this visual impact when you come into the park. This park is, I don't know how old it is. It's old. And the community is used to coming in and seeing this vast turf. Even though there are fields there, baseball fields, this immense field is wonderful. Well, now it's going to have a fence and now, can we change that? Can we modify it so that it looks visually okay? Maybe, I don't know, until you come out with a new design or something. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind that there is a visual impact there when people come into the park, and the park is over 300 acres, right? So there's many assets and things to do in that park besides baseball. Baseball's great, and it's one item. So we need to keep that in mind as far. So that's where we were, and that's kind of where we ended up, was this kind of split decision on, well, we're okay with it, there or there, but please consider these other couple things. No, I don't. In fact, I kind of lean towards 3. We still get the field. It'll look good. It'll meet all the standards. So, that's just my personal, and I think there's a couple of board members that felt that. But, we just need to take those other things into consideration. Thank you.
The board itself was split. There were, and we wrote all the pros and cons in the staff report. And the visual impact, I think, was really the main feature, because there were folks that said the visual impact's fine because isn't it great? We could do a mural on the exterior of the wind field, the wind fence, and we could change that like we do, signal boxes and something. Wouldn't that be a great welcome at the park? Where, another person's wind field fence is a visual distraction when they get to the park. So they were really split, and they struggled with that because they're such a unified group. So they thought they would just share that with you and for future conversations. So we do have Dr. White here, who's the Pierce College president, and we have Duncan Stevenson, who's the athletic director. He's been there for quite some time. And so we wanted to give them a chance also to share. They're a major partner in this project. And so just to provide some feedback, they've been with us along this ride for the last 2 years, and they just wanted to share some more information with you before we have more questions or council conversation.
Welcome.
Whoever invented these microphones is making a lot of money. We have these at the college too, and I had never seen them before the pandemic. Anyway, I'm Julie White, president of Pierce College, Fort Silicon. I often don't need amplification, so I know it is. I just don't, I'm trying to minimize the feedback. So thank you again for considering this. Thank you to Vito and the Parks Board for hearing from us and weighing in. Really appreciate that. As I've taken to saying, this is a baseball field, and with all due respect, it's more than a baseball field. So last week I shared some, 2 months ago, I shared some thoughts with you about the broader college access picture in Pierce County and in Washington. And so I want to just reiterate that 37% of Pierce County residents have any form of post-secondary education. We are 48th or 49th in the United States as a state in our college going immediately after high school rate, and in our completion of the financial aid form, the FAFSA, which is a major predictor of whether or not folks go to college. So we have a college access problem, and we had that before the pandemic. And now with the pandemic, we have it even more severely, and we are losing men, we are losing BIPOC folks, and we are losing folks, students right out of high school. So all of those are down, and that is not good for our economic picture and our ability to provide a labor force for Pierce County and for the citizens of Lakewood. And of course, as the students from UW referenced, we know we have disproportionate impacts in Lakewood. We know we have inequities. And so those are going to fall on our communities who are already most marginalized and most vulnerable. And Pierce County, Pierce College, is a way to mitigate those impacts. We know that when folks go to college, they not only earn more income, they contribute to their community more, they do more volunteer service, they have better health in general. There are all sorts of things that go with increasing access. So for me, having a baseball field in Fort Silicon Park is one of those, it's about access and visibility. You know, we have Clover Park Technical College and we have Pierce College in the city of Lakewood. And we have a hard time, I think, really getting our message out and helping everybody see that this is for them. Because so many people have gotten that message that maybe college is not for them, that they are not suitable for college. And we work really hard to help everyone be successful and provide support. So for all of those reasons, I think this is important. It's good from a baseball perspective too, and not just for Pierce College, but I think for youth recreation, for economic development, for bringing folks to the field who come for tournaments. And as a side note, I worked at a college in New York State that had not as a little bit bigger stands, but a similar kind of a field. And teams came from all around the state to play in that field. And so I think there's a significant revenue opportunity as well here, based on having a collegiate baseball field in the city of Lakewood. So that's my pitch. I do want to say, I think that Field 1 provides more visibility. We would love to have that field and understand the concerns and, see if there are ways that we can mitigate those if that's what the council decides to do. But I think that having that visibility is going to be so much more of an asset. And I think that the visual impact may be immediate, again, just because of what people are used to seeing, but I think that that will fade. And I say that as a regular user of the park as well. My dog likes the park even better, but he doesn't pay attention to those things. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Duncan, who can speak more to the technical. I said, once it gets into baseball, it's got to go to Duncan. Can speak more to the technical specifications.
That becomes me. Thank you. Members of the council, thank you very much for this opportunity.
I've been at Pierce College for 37 years, and I've been an employee of Pierce College for 35 years. We have had this longstanding reputation within our conference, the Northwest Athletic Conference, of being the caravan vagabond athletic department within the Northwest. For those that don't know, we didn't have a gymnasium on campus until 2007 when we opened. When I got here and took over the job in '87, our basketball teams played at the recreation facility at Western State Hospital. Our baseball team and our soccer team played down at Fort Steilacoom Park. In fact, both teams played on Field 1 back then. Our chancellor, Dr. Michelle Johnson, coached softball there from 1980 to 1985, won a conference championship there in 1982. We do have a long-standing history. When Lakewood Incorporated and the transition from Pierce County Parks to the newly developed Parks Department of Lakewood took place, Pierce College was very much involved with that. Our former president, Denise Shokum, our former facilities manager, Jim Taylor, and I sat on the Partnership Parks Board for a number of years. I was on for 12 years, helped fundraise the money for the 2 restrooms that are at the park. I don't consider myself just an employee of Pierce College representing our college program. I walk the same Oak Brook streets that Councilmember Boki does. I see you and your wife all the time. He sees me with my wife and our 2 golden retrievers. Yeah, everybody comments about those 2. This is a community investment for me, and I can understand why there might be naysayers that would say that I'm singularly focused on Field 1, but I am, and I've said from day one with Mary that if Field 3 is the alternative, we will make it work. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Because of the limitations of the access to the main access road coming into the park, the dimensional limitations in right and right center field are really substandard for Collegiate Park. They do not meet NC2A specifications. For those of you that watch Major League Baseball, if you're familiar with Fenway Park in Boston, you've seen the thing called the Green Monster. And it is that the dimensions of that park are very limited based on its location. And we have basically the similar situation for Steilacoom Park. What Boston has the advantage of doing is putting a solid wall there. That's not incorporated here. So what we have in right field and right center field is what's called in baseball a short porch. And for collegiate standards, it's really substandard. And I would also say that from a marketing standpoint, to bring other organizations and activities into that are dealing with adult level, college level, college summer league programs, they're not going to look at that as an attractive field. And so I just want to be really honest with you about that. It's quirky, and for us, we can make quirky work if we need to. Our baseball team in my 35 years has had 9 different home fields, and that includes 15 years at Mount Tahoma High School. So we have been the Vagabond program. We make whatever works work. Given the size of the investment that the college is putting forth, and understand this is not state money that is being invested by the college. This is student fee money. And so the students are very much committed to this. We've met with them several times. They're passionate about making sure that this happens for our students, not only now, but in the future. And so when I spoke with Mary a while back, one of her things was, well, you know, we, as Councilmember Branstetter brought up at our last session with you all in March, was the initial impact of driving into the park and having that open space and not having that broken. I would say that by placing the field at Field 3, you're actually breaking more of the park than you are by placing it on Field 1, because once you get past Field 1, you have the full expanse of the park. As you drive into the park, if you're not going to the ball fields, you're going left. And that view becomes the open area towards the dog park. As you wind around, you get past that. I hope you all had a chance to go out the last few weeks and take a look at the temporary fencing that's out there. What we're talking about with the permanent fencing is about 3 feet taller than is what there. And I think what may be perceived is when you drive up to Safeco Field in Seattle and you see the big stadium walls, well, as you saw in some of the conceptual pieces that Eric Gold put together for us, it's really not that significant. I also, when I spoke with the Parks Board, I got a little passion in me. So I spoke to the fact that I would hope that as a city, you would want to showcase this facility and have it really be a cornerstone to the entrance of the park and be a piece that you're proud of as opposed to that you're wanting to hide. It really has the opportunity to be really a central key piece in the community, not just at the park. In my conversations with the president of the Lakewood Baseball Club and also a major renter of the fields down there, GSL Tournaments, they're ecstatic. And in talking with both organizations, our program is committed to being partners in providing instruction, youth camps. I want to see baseball in Lakewood grow. I grew up playing baseball. Most everybody looks at me, as I'm sure they do, you, Councilmember Boki, and so we must have played basketball. Well, I did, but it wasn't my first sport. I started playing baseball at 6. And Dr. White doesn't hear this, but it is my favorite sport. My teams don't know that. I support them equally, but it is my sport. And I want to see baseball in Lakewood thrive. I want to see it grow. When I retire, hopefully in a few years, I've made a commitment to Lakewood Baseball Club to get on the board, to be part of that organization, and to help it grow. And I believe that this facility is going to help drive that. Dr. White and I were just very thankful for the letters of support we received from the school districts, the Clover Park District and the Silicon District, about the importance of branding the facility. Because we want the vision of education to be an opportunity and something that's attainable for all of our students, our young people in the community. And by having that as a place that they can go to during the spring when the college is playing games, when they go there during the summer to play their youth leagues, and they see home of the Pierce College Raiders on the scoreboard. I wore the battery out, that's why. I grew up in California and moved here to go to college, and I lived in a community called Davis, and University of California, Davis was about 6 blocks from my home. And my friends and I spent most of our summer on the UCB campus because of all of the athletic facilities that were there. This is the type of facility that's going to draw our community. And again, I just see it as a major piece of what can drive what can drive the growth of baseball in this community. When we met with the Parks Board, the report before us came from the Economic Development Council. And I know I should have written your name down because I totally spaced on it. Becky, thank you. Good, not too bad. As we were making our presentation, making our pitch, she smiled and nodded her head because she understands the value of what this field will bring to the community. And we're tremendously excited for this opportunity to be able to partner through it, to be able to invest our student money wisely, and to be able to see something that the college can be a partner in for a very long time.
And I just wanted to say, because there was I think we weren't clear enough about this with the Parks Board. Field 1 does come with an additional cost, and Pierce College is committed to funding that cost. So we pay, you get revenue. Everybody wins. You're paying too, I know.
So just to summarize, council had quite a few questions. We tried to address them on the chart that was attached. There are a lot of different questions, and then provide additional information tonight. So we'd be happy to continue the conversation, work with council so to move forward. We have a time frame that's been set in here for the project, and we just like to kind of confirm some things so we can move forward. The longer it takes to make those decisions, of course, the more expensive things are getting. And so we're just wanting to stay on schedule. We have grants and things like that. So, but we're happy to answer your questions or gather more information if there's more needed to move forward with this project.
Thank you, Ms. Dodsworth. I'm just getting my hands on the time frame. So it looks like, and then I'll get to council questions in just a second here, but just orient to me where the page is for the time frame.
It's on page 45,
45.
and it's the bottom of the chart where we had all of how much things were going
There
to
it is.
cost.
Ah,
Yeah, so
got it,
there's a
got it, got it.
target date for those. And it's pretty much just the design, it's going to take a little longer because there's subsurface if it's field 1
Got it.
versus field 2.
So we're talking about a year and a half, right? Till end of December 23.
Yeah, it would be complete by then.
Got it. So before I go to the whole question, I just had a couple of structural questions that might prompt some other discussion. So maybe I'll go up there and
Yeah, sure.
use my little pointer.
You want the pointer? We would want to take a look at the whole entry as to how best to, if whether it's a series of traffic circles, one big traffic circle, a left and a right based on where you're going. That's really up to Public Works Engineering to help determine that for safety as well as access. That's the existing bathrooms. Well, over here, there's 4 restrooms.
Is there 4?
There's 4
Okay.
there, plus a concession type building, which is really a shell we use for storage. And also maintenance for, the materials that you need to clean your restrooms and such. So there's storage in there, but we could always down the road, not with this project, we don't have the resources right now built in, but you can always expand something or add something.
Years ago, you were looking to get funding for lights for the ball fields. Is it possible with the infrastructure improvements on field 1 that would be easy to have stub outs if you wanted a light down the road, field 2?
Sure, yeah, we're gonna be putting utilities in to support that specifically, but it does come from the restroom size, so you'd be coming right there.
Got it. Okay, that's all I had.
Yeah.
So Mr. Branstetter, Ms. Bell, and then we'll just kind of go around.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Mary, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the Parks Board's eyes and opinion to be able to go and do that. I have to say that 2 months ago, when we were looking at doing this, I was not sure how I felt about it. And most of my concerns centered around the fact that it was going to be field 3. And that field 3 was in the middle of breaking up the long green pathway that we had. And I am actually quite a bit more comfortable with field 1. So when you make that turn and travel that 150 feet, you don't immediately see that long thing. I think you go another 150 feet and you see the very long expansive green that is part of what the people in our community talk to us about. The jewel of Fort Silicon Park is what they see. And the entrance is offset on quite a bit to where you don't really have to go very far to get by it to go on. And I'm really would be supportive of putting something there that would highlight Pierce College. Our vision, our 30-year vision for the city includes being having recognized quality educational institutions at all levels, to include our colleges. And this goes to emphasizing that and being able to go and do that. So I think that is the way that it would go. I think that I would, the one concern that I have about field 1, because I think it disrupts the park the least and does all of that, is it is also the location that is closest to a residential area. So I don't know whether public address systems and night or evening things are something that we have to educate the community about the value to. Economic development, field 1 seems much better because you have pedestrian access to businesses that would cater to people who are there. That doesn't happen at field 3, people that would drive from field 3 to go to get a coffee instead of walking, even though it's a park, whereas they will walk across the street to go and do that. And there are a number of restaurants in the area that are accessible. So it makes more sense to me from an economic development thought in terms of being able to go and do that. In neither location am I thrilled with 25-foot high fences along the fall lines, and because one fall line, no matter where you are, is going to have to reach out across the park. But it's less disruptive at field 1, and on the backside of that than it is on field 3, or particularly because of the way the road comes back to the field over there, you essentially divide things. Yeah. And as we've seen in other things that we have done in the park, the pavilion, the trail, around Wahop Lake and other things, we will be surprised at how the community finds ways to use it. So I think it's something that we will look to be able to go and do. And again, I guess my other in the weeds thing is we're going to have to really write the maintenance agreement well, because while I understand student fees are building it, when I was down at Bates and we got students to build something, then they wanted to move on to build the next thing. They didn't want us coming back every year to maintain the first thing, and that becomes a challenge between the two budgets, the city budget and the college budget, to be able to go and do that. And I like the fact that there'll be a flagpole right close to the entrance to the park.
Next to the.
So I'm certainly would be willing to move forward with the next version of the ILA with a field 1 designation.
Ms. Belvin, do you have anything? Okay, then Deputy Mayor Moss, I'll go around and then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you guys for the report. I had a lot of questions, but they've been answered. So I think one of the things that I had in mind was what was the real reason between 1 and 3? And I think you did a good explanation of that. So I'm good. I'm excited about the roundabout that's going to go in, because that is an area there that needs some help. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And other than that, I have no qualms with number 1, space number 1. And I think as we flesh it out more, we'll have a better idea and can see clearly, because I'm not too much good at visuals until I see it in actuality. So I'm okay with this. Thank you.
Well, the deputy mayor said everything I want to say, but I'll recap it briefly. So I too am fine with field 1. I sat through that entire presentation and I didn't really understand that field 3 it would shorten. I didn't get it, and I get it now. So yes, field 1, great. Roundabout, change the entrance. Change is hard. I remember when the dog park went in and I had to change my route, and I tell you, it doesn't even bother me now. So it'll be fine. This is great. I'm really excited for Lakewood and for Pierce College.
Yeah, I'm with Councilmember Brandstetter, and I think Councilmember Anderson also has expressed that he thought field 1 would be the better location. So I think this is dovetailing with putting it at that end of the park. There may be some neighborhood resistance, but I do think it preserves those sight lines that are really important. I do appreciate because I was one of the people that were like, I really think this needs to go in front of the Parks Board, and I really do appreciate that you guys really, you know, sunk your teeth into it and had a robust, it sounds like a robust discussion, so that was great. And I do appreciate who got all these groups to write the letters. Maybe you did. Good job on that. It was actually very helpful, and I was glad it went to Mayor Whalen first. And so I am interested in the guy from who hosts these tournaments. How many games are you guys going to play there? And how many? And then what's the pro forma guess? He's saying, well, if I get lights, I can play. Is it the lights that he can play more games, or is it, how's this going to work?
It's actually a combination of the lights and the turf surface. When we get into September and it starts to rain, those fields go to mush pretty quick, and especially with the dirt infields. When I spoke with him, he usually wraps up mid-September, and he's talking about programming as late as October to early November. Again, with the surface and also with the lights to be able to play longer as it gets darker. You will be amazed if you haven't seen the difference between an artificial turf surface and a natural grass and dirt infield. I'm old, so I'm a traditionalist, and turf really bothers me from my traditional baseball roots. But we are able to get so many more games, and right now we're playing at the Puyallup Valley Recreation Center, run by Puyallup City Parks, all turf surface. And we played earlier in March in 9 hours of a downpour, and we got 18 innings and we got 2 games in. In the Northwest, you just have to, and you're just seeing more of these transitions to turf surfaces. So yeah, they're very excited about the opportunity to be able to do more programming. And I know from a maintenance standpoint, the wear and tear on those fields will be, they'll stand up more, much longer.
Go ahead.
I was just going to follow up from if you don't do the turf and the lights together, what happens is if you add lights, then you're adding capacity, but it wears the native soils down. So if you're getting one way or the other, so you're either going to wear the soils out and then have to rest them for several months to bring them back. With the turf surface and the lights, then you can expand it. And for the tournament folks, they actually don't come here much after August because it gets to be either too hard and then it rains and it's too mushy. So this will change that. But they can't play Friday nights, right? Because school and activities is that it gets dark. And so they can only do, sometimes one, but in the spring, you can't really play a Friday night game. So if you can expand it earlier in the season, then you could have a Friday night game, full day Saturday, and then, depending on Sundays, how long you play. So it will expand it. And some groups pay by the game, some groups pay by the field, some groups pay by the weekend. So we'll be looking at, and from a business perspective, we don't have a fee structure based on synthetic fields. So we'll be doing some analysis on that in the next year and determining really what's the right fee schedule for this particular facility and that particular field. We'll be coming back to council with some information policies on that, just to have consistency. This is different than a neighborhood park, right? So you're going to have some policies to support economic impact, which are things like tournaments. And so, some groups that might want to use it for one game on a Saturday might not have access if you're going to be trying to get a tournament in, because that's really what brings in people that utilize your businesses and, buy fuel and things like that.
So I do have 2 more questions then. So what improvements do you need to make to the outside the infield? What improvements to the dirt are you making? Are you gonna have to scrape it and put in new drainage? And then 2, talk about the dimensions and the difference. You mentioned that it short porch and right field. If you run field 3, field 1 looks a little bit more whatever.
Yeah.
Explain
Sure,
what the NCAA standards
You get
are.
me talking baseball, I can go all
Okay.
night. So NCAA standards are down right and left field line to the foul poles are 330 feet.
Okay.
To right center and left center field is 375 feet, and a dead center field is 400 feet. So the way the field sits in field 3 is 325 down left field line, 375 to left center, 390 to dead center, and then a jog that goes a little further out to 400. And then in right center, it cuts to 330, and then 305 to the right field foul pole. So again, it's
So
a very,
quite a bit. shorter.
very, very unique. Again, the designer, we talked about placing the scoreboard in that area. So, we're concerned obviously about traffic and the pathway. So safety netting up there. But because it's netting, those are still considered home runs. So even with a 10 or 12-foot fence, it's still a very, very short distance.
Okay.
And so at field one, we get the full dimensions. In fact, when we were there back in 98 and 99, we actually bought the first portable outfield fencing for the park. When we were there, we went, I believe, almost 350 to left field. And we made it really deep because we had a good pitching staff. And so we wanted the opposition to have to hit the heck out of the ball. But it plays really well in that space. And again, you can get a very symmetrical 400, 375, 325 to 330 down the lines and have it look really good.
And you're still using aluminum bats. That's part of the issue, right?
Yeah. No, we use natural wood bats.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're the only collegiate league in the country that uses wood.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think we're going to have a first-class park on field one. Obviously, there are occasions when delay makes for better outcomes, and I'm glad that we took the time following our last meeting to send it to the PRAB board to get the good input. And it also gave many of us an opportunity to go out there and to talk to other park users, and I did. And to a T, everyone that I talked to, and I have a lot of guys, we all go out around the park. We're pretty big park users, all very supportive of doing this incredible project in conjunction with Pierce College. So that was huge. And then to get all, of course, the supportive letters was also very huge. So let's make it the best doggone facility we can for the budget and make it first class so that it is a regional draw. And I think it will build excitement, not just for the college, and certainly we'll have some economic development stuff. I think people get excited about having a home team to come watch. And you don't have to go to Cheney necessarily to see fun and, great play. You can come to your own backyard here at Fort Steilacoom Park. So I'm excited about it. I'm even as excited about getting a new roundabout potentially, because that is a mess. That crazy entrance is a mess. And it would be wonderful to get that little strip of asphalt redone, obviously, too, down the right-hand side there. So the only other comment I would have is because it's going to be so much more commercially viable on that end at field one with the lighting, I think it's better in that location because you got the intersection already. I think it does play well to the commercial businesses. Let's dress it up so it looks really good, in the corner, whatever, cool signage we need to do and maybe the mural work. And so it really is a statement piece for both the city and Pierce College. Congratulations. Yeah.
Mayor Whalen, if I could add one thing.
Absolutely.
Again, having been down this potential field road many times, I really need to acknowledge the silent partner who's in the room with us today, our facilities director, Gus Lim.
Oh, hi, Gus.
Gus has done just a phenomenal amount of work in support of this from our end. And as I've shared with him on several occasions, I have not had that sense of partnership in some of my previous efforts over the years. So I want to acknowledge Gus and all the work he's done, the support he's provided.
Well, thank you, Gus. I didn't know if you brought that. I thought that was a bag of money you brought with you.
And thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Say, I appreciate the process. I think we came up with a better project based on all the conversations that we've had. Those letters of support, by the way, were not hard to get. There was no arm twisting. It was immediate. And finally, I just have to reference your point about excellent educational facilities. I think I told you last time that Pierce College in 2021 was named in the top 10 community colleges in the nation by the Aspen Institute. It was just announced recently that for the 2023 competition, we are now in the top 25. And so then we'll go through subsequent rounds. And maybe we'll have a top one college go along with that baseball field. So that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, and last, we have a Parks sign project update. from Ms.
Sure.
Dodsworth.
Thank you very much. So we came to council, looks like a year ago, to talk about park signs. It had been, we had gone through this conversation with the park board. They'd made a recommendation. When we presented it to council, again, additional questions were raised, ideas were generated, and we left there thinking, okay, we weren't really clear what the next steps were. But we knew that we had done kind of as much internally as that we could do and needed some additional support. Council was supportive of that and put some resources into the mid-year biennial budget. It might have been the carry forward, but anyway, to take a look at getting some graphic support to help us with whatever the next steps are. So just as a quick summary, I wanted to show you kind of where we're at. So these are the current monument signs that we have in the city. These were created in 2002. It was a big sign project that we did when we first, not long after incorporation. Nobody really knew, are these parks? Are they city parks? Are they private? Are they public? And so we wanted to mark them so that people would know this is a place for you to go and play. So these are the monument signs. Also, they're solid concrete. We needed things that were somewhat vandal resistant so that they could survive as we were changing the impression of parks and public use in the community. So they've served us well. You can see the logos are our old logo, and they're in various sizes to support this specific area of the park. Some of the conversations that we had were, what kinds of signs do we have? Do we have any brands? Do we have any kind of consistency? And really the gateways are the most consistent signs that we have in the city, just because the city made an effort to create something and then put them in different locations. The sign on the bottom left was kind of a modification to a sign that had already been created to make it look like our other signs. But you can see they're in a little bit different in shape. They have some different wording on them, but there's some consistencies with materials. And it was really to mimic the logistics center from JBLM, but to look at it a little bit more modernly. So this was what we had come forward to chat with council. The one thing that the park board had said is that first of all, we looked at the city's logo as sort of the theme for the park signs. They wanted something that was less heavy, something that could be replaced if needed, that was a little more whimsical for a park setting than something as heavy as those concrete monument signs. So that was sort of the vision that we came up with. The park board looked at, the mountain shape, the forest shape, and then the water. And so they looked at variations of that with the color and the layout. But this is the sign right here, was the preferred option. It was utilizing the wood to sort of be a natural element. It would be, of course, treated and made to work in a park setting, but to utilize that sign there. Then the other options were something that's like with a concrete base that again would be more monument type to sort of fit into that side. And then the one on the bottom was similar to the kiosk that was built recently at Port Steilacoom, but also mirror a little bit of that design element from the gateways. So the sign itself was very consistent, but some of the mounting mechanisms were a little bit different. So that was what we had brought forward to council. And again, there was a lot of conversation. There was feedback on size, color, standards, font, etc. So we are getting ready to move forward with this project to get a little bit more information for council. Vito was a part of all of these conversations. And again, he worked with Metro Parks, so he has an experience with signs and different kinds of signs. But wanted to get feedback from council, maybe to give some direction regarding what the next steps are. So as we start working with professionals, we can focus their time and energy. The time frame would be to do some work this summer, come back to you, and we're really talking about park signs right now. Come back to you early fall to say, here's what we've come up with, what do you think? And then the idea is to We had resources in our 2022 budget to replace some signs, and then we have resources in our 2023 budget to replace signs. So the idea is if we're getting close, maybe we could just do them all at the same time, so. Beg your pardon? We have, there'll be, I think, 11 signs in whole when we're done at the neighborhood parks, at our main parks, so. We'd love to hear ideas, preferences, color, scale, material, size. I hate a squiggle. I'm hearing that in the background. I'm not sure what that means, but I'd be happy to get your feedback. Really, we'd love to get direction because we want it to be something that is representative of our city council, our vision, our parks. So whatever you decide is.
Let's just go around the horn, Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Thanks, Mary. I remember the previous conversation and looking at it. And I guess I've got to tell you that the project seems to be change for the sake of change, and I really am comfortable with the existing signs. The monument type signs. Because I think that they you know, having park signs be significantly different from other groups of signs. I mean, even for businesses, we have a code that prioritizes putting in a monument signs as opposed to other types of signs that they seem clear to me when I'm doing it, and that I think that maybe we have a few new locations that we want to put some signs. Maybe I don't know if any of them are in disrepair. That they maybe could be landscaped around a little bit, like the gateway signs are. But I'm not feeling an urgency to change the signs. I like the neutral colors of the existing signs to be able to go and do that, and they convey the message that I want a park sign to convey, to be able to go on. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not someone who like designs things and does this and does logos, so that's not my forte. I'm just comfortable with the way things are and don't feel an urge to change.
Councilmember Bell.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to talk about this. And yes, I said the squiggle. So I feel like things like the mountain and the squiggle are really easy design solutions. I'll look at the logo. What can I take from the logo and transfer that onto and put it in the sign? So that's why I said that. And I also feel like it can slightly date things and just not keep it as clean. So that's why I made that comment. I think that we need to be forward thinking with this signage. Either we play off of what we have in our gateways and build off of that, or we go a new way with the park signage and then take a look eventually at changing things like the gateways, street banners, just any sort of signage that refers to Lakewood so it all looks cohesive and that it's part of a family. So I look forward to seeing what your consultant comes back with for suggestions. I would love to see some that go a new path and to see where it goes, different fonts, a little bit things that are a little bit more solid, chunkier. I like the sans serif. I think that's good. I think that plays off, but I also like the serif option also. So I would like to see how they would take our existing gateway signage and change those and maybe enhance those into park signage. And that would stick with the neutral colors, all those kinds of things. So I think there's quite a bit of variation that they could come back from the consultant with. So is that a little bit clearer of direction? And again, I think it's something that we starting with the park signage, either we're move towards how the park signage is going to look for the rest of the city, or we work off of things like our gateway signage and continue to build on that. And I love landscaping, those kinds of things like that around signage. So those would be my suggestions. And again, not really going for the really easy design solutions.
Deputy Mayor Moss.
I have a different idea. I like the gateway. The gateway says we're entering Lakewood. And I would like the wood sign for the park because that distinguishes to me, I'm at the park, now I'm at the gateway, I'm entering the city. So I'm kind of like looking at separating those two, not that it has to be that way, it's just a thought that came to mind. I was looking at with the park signs, how easy they would be to maintain. And if we are going to coordinate our signs throughout the city, we need to work with the Historical Society. They have a problem with their signs. Their signs need to be more informed as well.
So you don't want us to match theirs. You want
No.
us to work with them to maybe help them be more aesthetically
Yes.
pleasing. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Like which ones are the historical society ones? Which ones are they?
The name in the streets.
Oh, those, the brown ones, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but just what I was saying is that I like keeping the park signs separate from the gateway.
So you're okay with something like this?
Mhm.
Got it, okay. Councilmember Farmer and then Mr. Boki.
7 council members, 7 different views, particularly
That
when
was
it
my
comes
problem a
to
year ago.
anything that's designed. Patty and I share this as a occupational hazard. So I'm actually a fan of this look. It's clean, it's modern. I like the wood. If it gets vandalized, I'm scared to death how much it's going to cost to keep it clean. My issue is that it is not cohesive. To Councilmember Bell's point, it doesn't match in any way, shape, or form the gateway signs. The city doesn't have sign standards. We don't look professional. We're getting there. The fact that we have gateways is amazing to me. It's an excellent first step, but they need to play well together. They need to be a family. There needs to be children. You need to look like you're from the same family. And so that's a layperson's way of putting it. Contrary to Councilmember Brandstetter, I am not a fan of the old, the current monument signs. They remind me of cemetery headstones. And plus with the old logo, it looks like we don't care enough to update our own stuff. And so the care that we take to put into things like this, particularly with the amazing care that our parks professionals do with the landscaping, and we're constantly upkeeping, and we're putting the care into that. Why wouldn't we put the care into the actual structures? And so it is incredibly important to me that we have standards and that we apply them throughout the city. And that is going to be big for me.
Mr. Boki is taking a design hiatus, as you will. Yeah. Okay, so I do kind of like design stuff a little bit. Here's kind of my thought. I don't have a problem with the differentiation in part between the gateway signs and park signs because it's a different function. I do understand the need to have some consistent theme. So here's a thought. If you look at your proposed options on page 75 of the packet, I'm looking at the one on the lower right-hand corner, which is akin to what you've just done at the kiosk in Fort Silcomar, the dark concrete
Similar to that,
base.
yeah. Mhm.
So if you were to look at the gateway sign, which has the stone on both sides of the column, could we not do stone on the left-hand side of the column on the lower right depiction? So at least it ties in and have a similar cap to what you have in the gateway signage around the city. So at least has some thematic consistency. I don't mind necessarily the Fort Steilacoom Park City of Lakewood color scheme using the one on the left, the lower left, but using the base on the lower right, potentially with the stonework on the one side to again bring in that design element. My only thought about using the concrete base as the wood, because I'm a big one for lighting, as you know, is maybe that kind of structure could lend itself to having some minor uplight to the sign at night. So if someone's passing by, they might say, oh, I've never seen that before. Oh, gee, that's the entrance to blank park or whatever it is. Don't know if that's an option in the locations where you have existing signage. It wouldn't be a deal killer for me. But
Not the park signs, no. The gateways,
the
do, all the
gateways
gateways.
definitely
yeah.
do.
The
Yeah,
gateways
and that
do.
would be another consistent element, right? The gateway signs are lit.
Mhm. The
You
Fort
would have-
Steilacoom Park one is lit at night. just 'cause
So,
it's on
so
that
here's the
corner.
other thing. Now we got this beautiful Fort Steilacoom Park one. Would we want to fiddle with that? Or at least
No,
these
no,
other
no.
ones could have the
It's
consistent.
to put on the backside because that's the main entrance to the park. And
Right.
so as,
I like
it would
that
be
one.
looking at something on the backside, just again, it's a,
Mhm.
that's what really kind of started the conversation, so.
So anyway, that's my thought. Again, the lower right with what you've done already, you've got an example. If it had that stonework on the side, it might add some consistency to the design element. Or left-hand side, excuse me, left-hand side of the right-hand example. You get it, right?
I wrote your notes. We'll
Yeah.
check that out.
here.
Yes, sir. Mr. President.
And let me just say, one thought that came to me is that as you're strategizing or you're looking to do that is with the work that we're doing on the Gravely Lake loop, the eventual work for the Green Street loop downtown and the eventual linear park along Pacific Highway, that think about a strategy and a standard for how you're going to assign linear parks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of two separate signs, so I just want to be very clear on that. The city needs to look like it is one city, whether it's like Gateway and then it has its babies, its children, whatever, but it needs to look like it belongs to the city. I love uplighting too, by the way. And I like the idea of having the consultant throw back some ideas with the changed middle portion, but
Oh,
with
yeah.
what you're talking about, the
Mhm.
concrete base, those kinds of things. I do like that. I also like really big, like stainless kind of.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Like the gateways they
Yeah.
have, but, okay.
Something along that line, I think. Yeah. I think those are good things to put back to the consultant of different materials that we're looking at. I think that would help them without directing exactly how to design.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of good information. That the color, I like incorporating different colors too, and just to see it.
Our best.
Ms. Farmer.
Is the consultant, excuse me, Ms. Dodsworth, is the consultant doing just the park signs or are they actually getting us a sign code so that we can look at the city holistically?
We were, the initial scope of work here is to work on the park sign project. However, if the council would like to have additional elements added to that, I mean, we could take a look at that within the budget that we have, or to look at what the options are besides that. We were really focusing on park signs with the resources that we have.
This is something that I brought up a year ago, is that I really would feel much more comfortable if our work on the park signs was done within the confines of the entire sign standard, which we don't have. So I would like to have the conversation that we do it holistically.
Mr. Boki, any other comments?
Some people care about this.
Well, we don't have a great consensus for you, except
We've got some direction, natural materials, maybe something in line with the gateway sign, but not as heavy, because this is quite, I mean, Fort Slocum is an entry to 350
That's
acre
heavy,
park. You know,
yeah.
you've got the smaller spaces. You're not going to be able to fit a giant thing like that, but something with consistency in style, looking at something with a little bit of color, but it could be a little bit neutral. We'll give you a couple of options, maybe up lighting, if not now, the ability to maybe do it in the future. And that it's some kind of a sign that looks like it could have babies. That's what I heard. Yes, this would be the baby of a gateway. But possibly looking at if we can figure it all out, how whatever we come up with this could look at something cohesive for the future that looks like something that could be created for directional signage, rural signage, building signage, park bench signage, linear park signage.
So you know you are part of Lakewood. When you see a sign, you don't even really have to think, you know it is Lakewood.
Okay.
I have one comment.
Sure.
It's, the old signs, and I remember when they went in, so I've been around for a while.
the tombstone.
Is they don't say the only thing that says City of Lakewood is the old logo that was put up on top, and that was added, right?
No, it's
No, that
part of
was
the
there?
sign,
Okay.
yeah. It was part of the sign. We have it.
It looks at it.
Yeah, it does.
No,
With
it
the
was,
white.
it was part of it.
Okay.
And the Oak Brook sign, you'd asked about replacement. The Oak Brook sign is damaged. It needs to be replaced. I don't think we could get these signs again, even if you wanted them. American Lake, they removed it during the Veterans Drive and
Oh,
it's
great.
gone. That has to be replaced. And then the idea is to, the idea is to, and some of the other ones, Wards Lake on the backside, that's one that was added, Wards Lake on the backside when we bought the property down to 88. So, yeah, just needs to have a modern touch.
Yeah, one final, just again, pithy comment. I like the one that PRAB selected down below. It's consistent with one next to the new bathroom kiosk at the park.
Yeah.
I have to say that the first day I was out there, some knucklehead had used a big magic marker and wrote graffiti on the wood portion of the sign. So I don't know how easy it is to sand down those cedar things all the time and to restain them, but I looked at that and I just, I about blew a gasket.
Welcome to our world.
I know, it's just, it drives me absolutely insane.
It's pretty consistent everywhere, so.
Yeah.
We do our best to create materials. We buy 2 of most things so that we can
Mhm.
replace things easily if they're not fixable. Some products, the products nowadays are treated as well as products to remove things. So we have methods to take care of things as best we can.
We have methods to take care of that too. No, just kidding. Graffiti.
I know, I wish.
Just put him in orange with a toothbrush to clean it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just unfortunate. But I think that, again, going back to the lower right, it might be easier to keep your concrete kiosks somewhat free from the damage that a nice, beautiful cedar post might sustain. That was my thought. Yeah, right. Well, easier to spray off or whatever. Yeah. Yes, Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Moss.
Mr. Bosworth, is it possible to seal those columns so that or the concrete ones?
Yes, you can put materials, now with stone on it, no, because the stone is porous and it's different shapes. But you can put material on any kind of a sign, walls, et cetera. that makes it the first time you pressure wash it to get the graffiti off, then you have to reseal it again.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, because it's basically providing a barrier between the natural product and, you know, knucklehead that's writing things. And so sandblasting and pressure washing and things like that.
We haven't seen graffiti on the stone. We've seen cars through stone.
Yes.
We've not seen.
Yeah,
as
we
much
haven't had too much
graffiti.
trouble with that.
Yeah.
And we actually have it, knock wood, I mean, I don't even want to say it out loud, but we really have not had much trouble with graffiti on most of our signs. There was one, somebody did something at the Fort Stolcom one, and one of our nice community walkers who really thought he was doing us a favor, ran home, got some goof off stuff and tried to wipe it off, but he just embedded the naughty words right into the sign. But we're fortunate that we purchased our signs from Plum Signs, and that now we know we can call them out and they can fix it, replace it, and they put the finish on it properly. So again, we have methods of doing things, and so some things we can do and some things we, you know, call folks in to help us because they just know how to do it better and cheaper and efficiently.
Well, thank you both for all your hard work on this. I know it's, again, it's design by committee is always challenging. Yeah. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, next week, we have a slew of items scheduled for our June 6, 2022 regular city council meeting. You'll see there on your sheet, including a proclamation for Ride Transit Month, a police commissioning ceremony, a few other presentations, and various roadway patching and chip seal program contracts to be awarded. So with that, I will turn to reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Good evening. 4 updates for you. The first is that Clover Park High School, after a two-year hiatus, is going to be bringing back their Arlington project that is scheduled for this Wednesday at 4 p.m. over at Clover Park High School. You've all been invited, and they are asking for RSVPs. So if you plan on attending, either let me know now or within the next few, by tomorrow morning, that would be great. So we can RSVP to the school district on your behalf, or feel free to do it yourself as well.
This is on the, it's on the 25th
Wednesday.
this week. It's 25th. Yeah.
Correct, Mayor.
Wednesday, yeah.
Actually, your next meeting is actually a week from tomorrow on Tuesday, May 31st. So this will be a follow-up to your retreat that you had back in March. And so the draft agenda focuses on 4 things. One is you've invited Jason Gauthier, the new SHAPE manager, to review their draft work plan with this body. This was something that the council asked for. Also, Steve O'Ban with Pierce County has been invited to provide an update on their Community First Village. And so those are the first 2 items on your agenda. And then the third item would then roll into actually the follow-up from your retreat that you had in March, and then identified next steps, which in turn would then roll into the initial review of the next funding applications that you've received with the ARPA funds, because there is some crossover between your retreat topic of discussion, which is the area of housing and homelessness. So those are the items that we've identified as part of your agenda, and certainly Mayor and Council, if there's something either you don't want on there or want something more, you know, now would be in the next day or 2 would be beneficial to let us know. Also, since this is going to be occurring at 6 o'clock, we do plan on having dinner for you. So I did get a suggestion that maybe some pasta and salad from Mia Casa, unless there's any kind of an objection, or if you want something else, let me know. So just want to put that out there. We'll ask them to do that. Earlier this morning, the city, we were notified by the library district that they have identified a closure date of the Lakewood Main Library. And so it'll be Sunday, June 5th, Sunday, June 5th. And so their last day of service will be Saturday, June 4th. They offered to attend an upcoming city council meeting just to provide an update. And so unless this body has any objection, we can schedule that for your next regular meeting as part of a presentation. They'd be more than happy to provide a 5-10 minute presentation on what's going on.
That'd be helpful.
And then lastly, I wanted to share some information, and this is all very, very preliminary. This is brand new in the last week or so, and it relates to Lakewood Landing. So we did learn late last week that a good portion of what we've identified as Lakewood Landing, totaling almost 14 acres, was sold by Diamond. They own all the parking lots up in Seattle and around in the Puget Sound region. And they sold it to an LLC that we are calling calling Sterling, because that's in their name. And it closed for $17.72 million, which is about $30 a square foot. 4 or 5 years ago, it was $6 to $8 a square foot. So just kind of give you an indication of the value of property here in the South Sound. Also, it did sell to this LLC who did not buy it, who was in the running to, was a company called Devco, which is a component of Heartland Construction, which is a regional developer out of Bellevue, and they do all kinds of mixed use, housing, commercial, retail. They do it all. They decided to back away because it just didn't pencil for them in terms of what they wanted to do down there. However, they are now focused on the Lakewood transit area in that neighborhood and looking at acquiring property in there. So they've kind of shifted gears. As a part of this acquisition, our Community and Economic Development Department did receive a very preliminary request from an attorney, which we believe is representing this firm. And what they are proposing apparently to do is to repurpose what I call the original Costco building that houses, among other things, the Discount World, and there's a go-kart place in there and things along those lines, into what they are calling a neighborhood fulfillment center, an NFC. They have also communicated that they view themselves as a competitor to Amazon. What that is, I don't exactly know, but that's what they have said. But what we do know is that, I think you can all recognize this, is that, the considerable amount of economic disruption is continuing to occur, particularly in retail operations, and they're changing very, very quickly. New logistic concepts, we've done some research, are emerging based on the way consumers are going to be receiving products, not just today, but as we look out into the near and the medium future. And basically, as it relates to supply chain processes, there's 3 main avenues right now. The first is the traditional warehousing, where you have a company, they store products for an extended period of time. It's a big building, it's got shelving, it's got forklifts, you've got big, huge trucks coming and going. And some large retailers will have their own warehouses to store inventory and things along those lines. A couple of examples of that is Associated Grocers. I worked in a warehouse back east when I was growing up. Selecting, or right here in Lakewood, McLean's. So those are examples of, traditional warehousing. The second, which has been emerging over about the last 5 years or so, are fulfillment centers. And so they serve as a hub for all logistic processes to get the product from the seller to the customer in one stop, all the way through the process. An example of that is Amazon. So Amazon has essentially mastered that. And there's others that are doing that as well, but Amazon is really the ones who have mastered the fulfillment center. The third one, which is the latest trend, which these folks are talking about, is actually called a micro fulfillment center. They call it a neighborhood fulfillment center, but it's a micro fulfillment center. And it's basically the way to speed up delivery to their customers by going to where the customers are. So locating in close proximity, just as a Nordstrom would locate at the Tacoma Mall, or a Kohl's would locate, down in Puyallup. So because of the way customers are shopping, now you're going to see these potentially these NFC or NFCs coming into neighborhoods. The difference, between all of these is timing, speeding things up, getting things. And then within an MFC, there's actually 4 types that we've been able to identify. And again, doing some research on this over the weekend. One can be, kind of a very small, highly automated fulfillment center that serves e-commerce. And also you can actually physically go there and pick it up. Typically they're 10,000 square feet or less. Matter of fact, they're happening right now. And I don't even think most people realize it, but Walmart and Target, as examples, have set aside portions of their current brick and mortar stores to do this. A second one is a purpose-built space. It could be as part of an existing footprint or added on. And again, Amazon, Walmart, Nordstrom's are others that are investing in these automated facilities where online requests for services and goods start to finish. The third type, also in existing stores, or they can be in garages, parking lots, basements, also sometimes called the dark store, because it's just stuff going out, but nobody coming in. Stuff going out, but nobody coming in. And again, it's because they want to be in close proximity to their customers. And then the fourth, which is what we interpret, what these folks want to do, is the model is an independent operator who then leases space or provides those services to multiple retailers. So they go out and they identify the retailers that they're going to provide services to get their goods to their customers. And that's how they have, generally speaking, have communicated that to Mr. Buer and a couple of his team members. One of the things as we look at our code is that our code doesn't fully address this. And Mr. Buer has done some very preliminary research. Apparently, there aren't any cities that are ready for this. And again, this is emerging technology. This is economic disruption. It's beginning to happen. And so we need to start evaluating and considering if this is going to happen in Lakewood, how are we going to address it? Right now, they have asked for a draft interpretation of what our code allows or doesn't allow. So we're going to take a look at that. We do have a number of questions in terms of exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it, because this is all new. And so I just wanted to give you folks a heads up that this has come about. And so we're, again, doing our due diligence, doing some research, and we'll certainly keep you appraised.
What is that? That wasn't part of the Lakewood Station sub-area plan, or was it?
It is within the sub-area plan, yeah. And actually, if this was to be allowed, they would have to comply and conform with our standards of design and our form-based code and all of that.
Don't we require mixed use?
Nope.
In that location? No.
No. It's allowed mixed use, that's correct. That's what they have said. They are using the existing building and expanding upon it and completely renovating it.
We allow mixed use in the central business district as well, but we don't require it. So someone could go down to Terry Emmert and say, hey, I want to do this neighborhood fulfillment center at the old QFC.
I don't know, because again, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
So concerns me now.
So, these are based on a little bit of research that we've done. They are popping up in Europe and also on the East Coast of the United States. So that's this information. That's where we've been able to garner this from, primarily from what's going on the East Coast. That's what they're calling it. But the official name is a micro fulfillment center. And again, it's the, you order something and they go out and they get it. Also, these micro fulfillment centers, the way they get from the center to, say, your doorstep is either a van or a car, or what we're also have found is in very dense areas, scooters and bikes. Also, another example of that, but kind of at a larger level, is Amazon with their drones. So that's another, so this is all part of, you know, all of that. Again, getting product to their customers as quickly as possible.
In your comment, on the email comment earlier today, Mr. Caulfield, on this, you mentioned that DevCo had pulled out, was looking at the station district in lieu of Terragon, but I didn't hear that Terragon had not completed its purchase.
Terragon, I'm not sure if they're still involved or not, but DevCo is. So Terragon, we haven't heard from them in a little bit.
Okay, because that was news to me, because I thought they had completed the acquisition.
We had thought that as well. So, but that's what we have been told.
Okay.
So as quickly as a deal, it's an example of as quickly as a deal comes together, it can fall apart.
Anything else, or that's it?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to give you all a heads up on
Any
that. So,
questions other than what we heard from Mr. Caulfield on that?
we'll keep you posted on what we learn.
Quick.
Oh, actually, I was going to add one benefit. You know, if we go back 10, 15 years ago, you know, the objective there was to have retail to generate sales tax. So this is a form of retail. It is retail, and it would potentially generate a considerable amount of sales tax for the city of Lakewood.
Yeah,
So.
true. Got it. So we discussed the retreat agenda on the 31st. And it's a little bit similar in terms of our Thursday community coffee house coming up this week in terms of the participants. Do we know if Mr. Copriva has kind of got that
We just
out on
sent,
social media?
we did. We sent something out earlier this afternoon.
Good.
And your panel will be, of course, yourself and Mr. Buer, as well as, well, you'll be facilitating, and I imagine. Also, Jen Hutchins from LASA will be there as well. So I talked to her this afternoon, and so.
Great. All right, well, let's zoom to council comments before midnight. Mr. Branstetter.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that I did spend some time early on at the youth summit. I got there a little bit before it opened. And I would say that both the youth who were planning it and setting it up and the vendors who came, and there was a mix of vendors who were looking for employees as well as ones that wanted to offer services that was in line with what the youth council has told us youth are looking for. They were all happy with the venue and looking forward to a good day. And the feedback I got was that it met the expectations of the youth council members who were heavily involved in planning, and that's important to be able to go and do that. I attended the Armed Forces Day at McCord, and like a lot of things that had been on a hiatus and not been held in a while, that added to the energy of what was going on there for a lot of folks there. And then I did get to the Dancing in the Street Fair, which is there, both the LMCC and all the things. But again, talking to the vendors who were there, they were very complimentary of the organization and the opportunity of how staff was able to get them worked into doing that. And while I did not do any, there was a lot of dancing going on. I would note that last week, the U.S. Congress finally went ahead and authorized a congressional gold medal for members of the World War II Merchant Marine. If you remember, about 6 years ago, they did that for Philippine Scouts to do that, and locally there was a thing of where we had a lot of former Philippine scouts or families of former Philippine scouts in this area. And there were multiple ceremonies over a number of years to obtain those medals and provide an actual medal for each of those families. We don't have that same merchant marine thing over there, but I have asked the city manager to look into what is the process to perhaps a year from now at Memorial Day or Veterans Day to see whether or not some folks or some survivors of folks who are in the Merchant Marine, because we are a city that is our venue of flags is unique in that it includes the Merchant Marine. They're not even a thought in many other things to do that. So if that becomes viable for something for us to do on whatever scale is appropriate, I hope we can take care of that. And then I guess the last thing is regarding to our next agenda in January. One of the things on there is a resolution about renaming. And I have asked the city manager to draft me an amendment to the resolution that we looked at that simply said that if you submit an application, that there's an application fee to cover the administrative costs to do that, as there is for almost everything else that where someone applies for an administrative thing to do that. And I'd be looking to either probably offer that amendment to that resolution to do that. I have no idea what the fee should be, but we'll choose something to start with, and then we'll put it in the fee schedule when in January when we do the fee schedule again. Got it. And let me see. Oh, and the last thing I got over here is Mr. Joe Clark, who was here and spoke to us about cross country, and as they were talking about favorite sports when you were a young person, cross country is mine. To be able to go and do that, but he's been honored with an award for his 30 years of service as a coach. That I believe is put out by PLU in honor of Foster Westerling. So he's going to be receiving that accolade, and based on the few times that I've met him, and particularly this last presentation, it sounds well deserved. That's all I have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Bill.
Microphone issues tonight. Something. You mentioned PLU, so I have to say go Lutes. Sorry. It's just a theme. So I'll make it very quick. I went to the youth summit this weekend and oh my gosh, amazing. So amazing. The youth, the teens were great. The vendors were super relevant. They had wonderful things to contribute, and I saw a lot of conversation and dialogue happening. I went to your wonderful session, which I thought was fabulous. It's so great to hear perspective of, the 7th through 12th grade, and it's enlightening. So that was very fun. And then I went to the Dancing in the Streets event, and I did dance. Sorry. I didn't see you though. We missed each other. And my family was there and they danced too. We enjoyed it immensely, talked to a lot of people. It was great to have the community out and about. So got some dessert before dinner, that kind of thing. So it was wonderful. So I want to thank the park staff for just going all out with this and really utilizing Motor Avenue and Colonial Plaza. They're amazing, and the things that they can pull together for the size that they are, I am shocked and amazed and so proud of them. And then I will be at the Community Coffee House on Thursday. So I look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start I went to the PCRC. We're still doing things virtually. Just got presentations again. And so the subject came up about growth targets. And so We've got that growth target. I think that's going to put us to almost 87,000 people by 2044. So get prepped for that. Figure out how many people we can get into Patty's backyard. But so it's going to happen. I think it's as soon as next month. So we'll see. And beyond that, there really wasn't, they just had some presentations from AWC and whatnot. I enjoyed both events. Really proud of the youth council event, that there were so many people there. And I like the vendors too. I think it was very, you never know when you get vendors to a youth event, but I thought it worked out. And then the dancing in the streets was wonderful. I partook of the food truck. I didn't have dessert first though. So, but you know, people can do that. That's fine, I guess, if that's appropriate nutrition. I don't know. But anyway, so enjoyed that, and put me down for the Arlington project on Wednesday. I think that's a very good event, and I'm glad it's back. And I guess we have a county council meeting here tomorrow night or Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, Councilman.
Wednesday night. So I imagine a few of them can show up to this too. So, but they'll be in this chambers Wednesday night, and then I'd like to go and heckle Councilmember or Mayor Whalen at his event on Thursday. But I'm also, but I do have I think there's another meeting. I think that LHAB is at that point in time too, but I'll figure that out. Thanks. Are you a 6, Mayor? Is that your event on Thursday, 6 o'clock, or was it? 7?
Yeah,
6 o'clock.
right.
So it is the same as LHAB. Shoot, okay.
Yeah, you can come heckle me anytime. I was heckleable on Saturday, so that's good.
I'm done.
Councilmember Farmer.
I too had a great time at the Youth Summit. I partook in the afternoon sessions, and so I got to hang with Pierce County teen librarian that I used to work with back at the library, and we had a blast at Art Jam. And let me tell you, those kids know how to make a mess with some clay and some painting, and I was washing paintbrushes for hours. But that was a lot of fun, and they were hanging out until the very end. It was just great. Also did the dancing in the streets, and that was a lot of fun as well. I would like to request a Pride proclamation and a Juneteenth proclamation for June. If we can squeeze them into the first meeting of the month, that would be awesome. If not, however it works. And then I offered to speak on behalf of the Library Advisory Committee subcommittee that chose our folks. So we met on Friday, and we chose our 6 applicants, and they are Darwin Peters II, Virginia Rawlings, Josette Parker, Liana Olds, Amelia Escobedo, and Chelsea Shosik. I apologize for any mispronunciations there. And I wanted the rest of the council to know that we had 38 applicants. 6 had already been chosen by the library system, which left 32 very well qualified applicants. I don't know why I keep volunteering for these committees where we have to winnow these down, because it's a very challenging exercise. I was very pleased with the quality of the applicants. We had some really amazing folks who stepped up. And here are the things that we looked at. We looked at finding a balance between library users and non-users. We looked at geography, where folks lived. We didn't require that they live in the city, but if they did put down their address, we looked at did they come from which parts of town did they come from? Did they come from Oak Brook? Did they come from Springbrook? We looked at which branches they mentioned that they visited. so that we could get a mix of the two branches. We looked to see if there was a military connection. We looked to see if they were already on another board or commission. We looked at what skill sets they brought. We had some folks that had a deep, deep understanding of library science. We had professors and folks who were just steeped in it. And then we had some everyday people, moms who take their kids to the library and experience the library on a completely different level. And then we looked at the members that the library had chosen, and we made some decisions to balance some gender and cultural heritage aspects. And so we were really looking at quite a few things to come up with a tiny number of 6. It's a really good group. We're really proud of the group, and we're excited for that. What I would like to bring up is that the city manager let me know that the library would like to schedule the first meeting of the group for June 13th. But we are not slated to vote on this group until the 6th of June, which makes it very difficult for them to reach out to the group to start getting on people's schedules and that sort of thing. So I am wondering if the council would be open to adding a special regular meeting, short, very short, one agenda item, to our meeting on the 31st, since we're already getting together. I don't know if that would be a possibility.
Assuming it's procedurally fine with staff, I have no problem with that. Yeah, so we can get it done. Thanks.
At the end, beginning. Meatballs for the pasta. Well, that would be excellent. That would allow the library to reach out a week earlier. That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. And then also one last note, I am out of town on a pre-scheduled vacation, so I will not make any of the events later this week. And I'm very sorry to hear that. There's a lot going on. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the subcommittee members for going through the applications and coming up with a really good diversified panel. So thanks for that. Deputy Mayor Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be able to attend the Allerton project on Wednesday. I have another engagement in golfing. And the weekend was really full of a lot of activities, and I really did enjoy the youth summit. And like you have heard before, that everybody was in the right frame of mind. Everybody was really happy to be out, and they had lots of goodies to offer. And so it was good. I did attend the mayor's first meeting, and it was interesting. But it helped me to understand some of the things we hear from the people in our communities, because it's out there and it's not necessarily true. And but it was good. It was good to know that, this is what we have to work on. These are the things that we have to deal with when we talking to the community. I enjoyed dancing in the street. I did not eat dinner, but I did have some ice cream. And I did dance. Yes, and so no dinner but ice cream. LMCC got a lot of attention at the booth, a lot of interest, a lot of ideas, suggestions, and people that want to join us. So I'm excited about it. We're going to do wonderful things. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It was, shall we say, an incredibly busy week. For me, I had a couple of Pierce Transit meetings. Just one quick policy issue coming on board. We are working on language to change the fare code so that youth 18 and under will ride free. We have to change that in order to avail ourselves of some legislative monies that are coming down for the next biennium. The financing will be a net positive for Pierce Transit. It's like $8+ million annually that the agency gets by offering free fares for 18 and under. So that will be moving forward, just so you know. We'd already talked about the coffee house, community coffee house this Thursday. I hope it's reasonably well attended. We should have some good speakers there with Mr. Oban and Mr. Gauthier and Jan Hutchins, and certainly our own staff member, Dave Buer, to talk about all things housing, not just homelessness, but housing. I think it'll be helpful. The youth summit was, I thought, very well done, very well attended. I enjoyed kind of, the opening opportunity to do the Indigenous land statement and make some comments. I brought up Hank Jones to help share in that, and he's a great young man, as you know. We went into the 2 facilitated discussion sessions. The first one was kind of interesting because there really wasn't a lot of conversation. If we do it again next year, I will have some comments about how to facilitate that a little differently, because I think it could be a little bit meatier and have some greater value for those of us who are trying to really cull good student input. The one memorable comment at the end of the first session was, "Are you wealthy? Because you don't dress like it." And so it's like, okay, great. Yeah, and that was after spending the first 25 minutes going around the room discussing what was our least favorite cereal, breakfast cereal. I thought, okay, my time could be better spent than that. So, that was the whole icebreaker facilitation. Didn't need it. But, the second session was stronger, it was smaller, interesting comments. I'll probably chat with you a little bit later about that, but there were some concerns raised by some of the students about safety in the schools that they feel isn't being addressed. So anyway, more to follow if we ever have a joint meeting. But I thought the second session was quite good and the kids were great. My phone died. Otherwise, I would have read to you this very glowing report I got back from Hank Jones, because I called him later that day to get his feedback. And I've got a decent relationship chatting with him. He's very, very good at communicating. And he was very positive, and he went down kind of a list of real positives that came out of the youth council that culminated basically in it met all of the youth council's expectations on a number of levels. So that was really good to hear. And he will report back at the next opportunity when he comes before the city council. But I was pleased to hear that from him. Mr. Caulfield, myself, and Michael Vargas, who works with the city manager for policy issues, met with Congresswoman Strickland and her office folks, as well as Senator Cantwell today, to discuss our federal delegation. Oh, Deputy Mayor Moss, obviously, it's a little late. My head is getting a little fuzzy. So we were a team, and I was pleased to have Deputy Mayor and Mr. Caulfield and Jake Johnston provide updates on 4 or 5 major topics of interest, include JBLM clear zone issues, some DSIP funding issues, the South Tacoma Way project that we're thanking them for their support to get that over the finish line, those kinds of things. So anyway, the work of our legislative lobbying rolls forward. Mr. Clark, it was great to see his accolades that came through. I thought his presentation last week was fabulous. He wasted no time in sending me an email asking for support for additional Santa cans for the large event that will occur in the park that will have great economic impact and development. So he's looking to us for helpful funding for additional Santa cans. So I plant that seed to avoid a challenging situation with Santa can overflow. Finally, Mr. Anderson wanted me to bring up, I guess, a topic for our consideration down the road, which is potentially a camping ban on public property. I don't know if he chatted with Ms. Wachter about it. I think he indicated that you might be chewing on the issue to provide feedback either tonight or down the road. Maybe not tonight if you don't wish to, but.
Yeah, actually, he chatted with me, Deputy Mayor. And so I suggested that he bring this up to the body to get some consensus and direction. And if that's what the council wants to do, we can draft something accordingly. His brief comment to me was an ordinance that would prohibit camping in city parks on all public property, whether owned by the city or not, and the public right of way.
So it may be worthy of a discussion because those are 3 different kinds of parameters, and we can talk about the pros and cons of that. I have received some calls about what I think is still public right of way, Mr. Caulfield, over between the 2 hotels off of South Tacoma Way or Pack Highway. that apparently it's becoming a little bit of a tent city down there toward the Washtenaw property on the very end of that, which is not a good thing if that remains city property. I don't know if we vacated that or not, but it's becoming an issue for people. There's concerns. People have called me that if the library decides to close, what's going to happen on that public property when it's vacant? So it's a topic that has some legs to it. And I think we should probably have some feedback if that's okay with the rest of you. At least look at options. Not a bad idea, at least have an opportunity to talk about it. Did you have a comment, Ms. Furman?
I think it's a great topic for discussion. I would like to look at it from a regional perspective. We've dealt with this at the state. We had a couple of areas that were camping was banned and then they just moved to another area. And so, you know, had we had a conversation before, we could have done something in consultation. So I'm just curious what other cities in the county are doing and if we can coordinate.
Absolutely. I think that can be part of our conversation, Mr. Caulfield.
Mayor and Council, I'm not going to be ready on May 31st for a discussion
Got
at
it.
this point.
Okay. But at least we can discuss the fact that we want a discussion on the 31st.
I'll leave that to you.
Got it.
But I
Okay.
I won't have any.
I got it. Yeah, no problem. Yep. Yep. Well, the regional piece, some people are emailing me about is, gee, didn't we help buy a facility on a regional partnership basis so that we could help facilitate some emergency housing? And I said, yes, we did. So anyway, more to follow on that. It's a conversation that's certainly worth having. Yep. So that is all I have, except to look forward to hearing from the library folks that you said the next scheduled meeting perhaps, so we can discuss how people are going to avail themselves of services when the library is closed in a very expeditious manner. Other than that, we're adjourned.